I'm here with my documentarian hero, James Fox.
And U.S. filmmaker James Fox.
This message goes out to whoever's piloting UFOs, providing your presence is friendly, which it appears to be. Reveal yourself soon, so my friends and family will stop thinking I'm crazy for chasing the elusive UFOs. This is James Fox, signing out.
Who's made an incredible, I think, 7 documentaries at this point?
Yeah, it's like 6.5 or 7, because I did a couple of versions of Out of the Blue. So I count that as almost 2, but it's at least 1.5, because I spent another 2.5 years completely revamping it. So I did 50 Years of Denial, then it was Out of the Blue Director's Cut, I Know What I Saw, The Phenomenon, Moment of Contact. Shoot. I guess this would, well, 6.5.
And the program, which is coming out, we just had this amazing screening last night with Hal Puthoff, of all people, who's a star of the documentary itself.
Our detection platforms are so well advanced, so we could see a lot more. Then it really is a zoo of options and possibilities.
And it's just incredible. And so I hope you're very proud of it. And I know this has been a long slog, many decades for you, and I feel lucky to kind of ride the coattails, you know, kind of draft aerodynamically behind people like you. So I'm very grateful to you, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you. And I love seeing younger people, the new generation, recognizing how significant the story is. It's you know, I used to often ask people when I was first started out, they'd go, you don't actually believe in this shit, do you? They literally would say that to me. And I'd say, well, let me ask you, if it were true, and I'm not telling you to believe that it's true, but if it were, how significant of a story would you give it? And everybody says, be the biggest story in history. I was like, well, I'm convinced it's happening. So it's not a story that's easily just dropped, right?
Yeah, kind of changes everything.
Totally.
From math, science, physics, to religion, to everything. And it's interesting. I was with Danny Sheehan, as you know, you're friends with him as well. Just interviewed him, and he was talking about the root of the word religion is religare, which means to relink.
The Latin root of religion is religare, which is like to relink.
And so in some ways, I think what you're doing is relinking us to our true kind of epistemology, which is knowing that these other beings might exist. And maybe in the past we did know that, and we've forgotten for a very long time. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think what's really exciting about it is that the phenomenon I refer to transcends politics, transcends religion, transcends borders. It's one of the few topics that is really encouraging to see both Democrats and Republicans working together on.
Yeah.
We're going to uncover the cover-up, and I hope this is just the beginning of many more hearings and more people coming forward about this.
We should have disclosure today. We should have disclosure tomorrow. The time has come.
And it's that really excites me, because we're living such polarized times. So to see that, and for people to recognize, like, this is bigger than all of us, right?
Yeah.
This is potentially has something to do with the bigger picture of who we are and our place in the universe and our very existence. So it's very exciting. I mean, people ask me, like, do you think it's scary? I'm like, no, I don't think it's scary at all.
Yeah, I think it trivializes our differences.
Totally.
And in many ways, I think people always worry about it sort of debunking or overthrowing religion. I think it reinforces religion.
Yeah.
I think if you actually look at a lot of biblical stories, that stuff becomes a lot more real and less mythical.
Yeah.
And so I think in some ways it's reinforcing, and this sort of Cold War era kind of low energy thinking of, like, you know, we can't accept this truth might just not make sense. In fact, it might actually re-enchant us.
I interviewed a theologian at Berkeley named Ted Peters way back from my first film, UFOs 50 Years of Denial, because everyone was like, well, it conflicts with religion. And he's like, no, it doesn't. And of course, he's a theologian at Berkeley, and he's also like part of the science, science and theology at Berkeley University. So he's like, there's room for both, and there's room for all God's creation, you know?
Yeah.
We're just part of a much bigger picture. And I thought that was an important aspect of accepting the phenomenon, not being afraid of it or assuming that it was demonic.
Yeah.
Or just because we can't explain it doesn't mean we shouldn't look into it, or doesn't mean that, you know?
Totally.
it doesn't exist.
In all religions, there are beings between man and God in the consciousness chain, so to speak. So,
well, I mean, gosh, if you think about it, imagine if cavemen watched a flying saucer descend out of the sky. They'd probably think of them as gods, you know?
Yeah. Or think about us landing in, North Sentinel Island or some French Polynesia back in the day. It's like, what are these things? What's going on? Yeah. So, well, I'm so excited to be here. I don't even know where to start. I mean, there's so many jumping off points. But how did you get into, I guess, UFOs to begin with?
So I had a really good friend, this guy Renee Harris, and in high school, and when we graduated at 18, we flew to Europe. We bought an old beat up Fiat 131 in London, and we painted the doors. We wanted to kind of spice it up a little bit, so we painted the doors red, and the rest of the body was white. And we're going to take this car, and we're going to drive it all the way down to Portugal. And I remember my aunt was thinking, "Oh my God, these guys aren't going to make it to the English Channel, right?" And so we drove across Europe together in this old Fiat 131, and just had a wonderful time. And I was like 6 weeks across Europe, and then he flew home a little early, and I stayed on, and we just kind of, life happens, and we just kind of lost contact for a couple of years. And then I came back, and we reconnected when I was like 23, and he was all into like UFOs and alien spaceships and Roswell. And I remember thinking to myself, God, what a bummer, man. I'm going to lose one of my best friends. I'm going to have to cut this guy loose because he's clearly lost his mind. I'm serious. I was just, what a bummer. I was like, this is such a bummer. It was like one of my closest friends, And so I was like lamenting about it at the work. I was a kind of a gopher at a production facility in San Francisco. And there was a guy that was my boss, Richard Van Sickle. And I said, Richard, and I really looked up to him. He's very smart and really just educated, really great guy. So Richard, man, was just my buddy, and man, I'm gonna have to cut him loose. He's just all into like these UFOs he's talking about, and he's talking that an alien spaceship crashed in Roswell. And I was expecting him to go, oh my gosh, thank God you have cut that. He goes, James, you haven't heard about that? You haven't heard about Roswell? I was like, well, how would I have heard? No, I haven't heard about Roswell. He goes, yeah, the U.S. government actually admitted that they recovered it. I said, really? So I started like looking into it reluctantly, and I thought, wow, there's something going on.
I want to know what's going on. Would you ever open up Roswell and let us know what's really going on there?
So many people ask me that question.
I know, it sounds almost ridiculous, but it's actually the real question I want to know.
It sounds like a cute question, but it's actually, there are millions and millions of people that want to go there, that want to see it. I won't talk to you about what I know about it, but it's very interesting. But Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So
that was it.
I went to a few conferences. I met some military folks, and I thought, I think I'm going to make a documentary on UFOs. And I remember my dad, who was a mainstream journalist, and he was like, son, you have lost your marbles. You've got to reconsider. He said, it's a dead-end street. It's not going anywhere. Don't waste your time. And of course, that drove me even further.
Yeah.
And so I stuck my teeth into it, and I made my first doc.
It's interesting, too. It's like people on the outside looking at UFOs often just assume there's nothing there. But I think the second you like take it serious, it's like almost like a week into taking it a little more seriously, you start to gather probably enough data even in that week to make your like probability that there's something there, something here worthy of investigation. Like it becomes very clear like pretty quickly actually once you kind of flip.
It looks like that we have a problem here that needs further investigation.
Yes.
Okay, so I remember when I was 19, I was dating this girl, Rachel Miller, and she was a year older than me. And she goes, oh, my previous boyfriend was really into UFOs. And I remember immediately, just going, why would she date a freak into UFOs? Like, what? It really kind of affected my thinking about her judgment and like who she was as a person. I was thinking to myself, gosh, but how was that sort of impregnated in me? Why was that? Why did I have that knee-jerk response? You know what I mean? I was like, sort of thinking about as I learned more about the phenomenon and the relationship between the government and the phenomenon, you know, the Robertson panel in 1953
absolutely
adopted this policy of ridicule, and it was a very effective campaign, and it stuck.
The Robertson panel was a scientific committee which met in January 1953, headed by Howard P. Robertson. The panel arose from a recommendation to the Intelligence Advisory Committee in December 1952 from a Central Intelligence Agency review of the U.S. Air Force investigation into unidentified flying objects, Project Blue Book.
And that was a classified document. For anybody who thinks that was some sort of psyop or whatever, that was supposed to be classified and came out later.
Yeah.
And it was, let's systematically downplay UFOs through media, books, movies, everything.
Because what's funny about a pilot claiming to see something that he can't explain? That's actually should be of concern.
Yes.
Some of them appeared to remain stationary in winds aloft, move against the wind, maneuver abruptly, or move at considerable speed without discernible means of propulsion. That's pretty intriguing.
I mean, you're picking up something on radar, you're seeing it visually, the tower's got it, and yet this policy of ridicule and laughter just really stuck. And it was a very effective, I have to hand it to him.
It was very effective.
It was a very effective campaign.
And it was kind of, in some ways, the constitution for Blue Book. Like, it became the mandate for them to, you know, swamp gas and, you know, the lights and whatever, you know, the easy ways to rationalize, explain away, you know, what was actually going on. And I think there's actually this 1971 document that came out of Australia from the Joint Intelligence Organization by their head of their nuclear division named Harry Turner.
Between 1952 and 1963, the British government conducted nuclear tests in Australia, including the Montebello Islands, Maralinga, and Emu Field. During this period, young physicist Harry Turner observed and investigated mysterious phenomena that he believed were unidentified anomalous phenomena. His experiences led him to advocate for serious and thorough investigation of UFOs.
And he's doing this whole retrospective on American inquiries into anti-gravity and UFOs. And he basically makes the case that there's this cleavage almost where the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence splits off and they're studying the real stuff. And then you have the Air Force and Blue Book, and it's just this kind of fake sham, you know, understaffed job.
Show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I remember Jacques talking about a document that he accidentally found in the files of Dr. J.L. Hynek, who was the scientific advisor to Project Blue Book.
In my association with Project Blue Book, I know very well that it was not a scientific project. Also, I also know that they never would notify the media when an interesting case came up. They did everything they could to keep it down. So they definitely withheld information.
And Jacques worked with Dr. Hynek, and I guess Hynek was asking him to help organize his files, and Jacques Vallée came upon a file of a document that was classified that he shouldn't have seen, that basically talked about this, a program that paralleled Project Blue Book, but it was way underground, with way more funding, way better scientists, all these things.
The document revealed an ultra-secret, highly funded scientific investigation, working parallel to Blue Book, unknown to all but a select few. The letter was signed by H.C. Cross, Director of Exotic Metallurgy at Battelle National Laboratories,
which he ultimately got publicly released for. We featured it in the phenomenon, but it was a parallel effort that had just gone underground.
Do we know anybody involved in that effort?
It's in the phenomenon, and I don't know if there's any particular names. There probably were. I'd have to look back. It's been a few years since I've seen the document, but basically the implication was there was a very well funded panel of eminent scientists that were involved, and that the Project Blue Book was just a dog and pony show.
The Phenomena, by the way, is an incredible movie, and I want to say half my friends got converted into believing in UFOs from that movie. It's just so comprehensive and detail-oriented, and I remember that part of that movie, and then I interviewed Jacques, and I think I had forgotten that there was a deeper program than Blue Book, and he goes, there was a deeper program that the Air Force had around this stuff.
They had a real project going on that was secret. Okay.
Is that true?
And the Air Force did.
Oh, I didn't know that. And in this Australian document, they do mention Freeman Dyson, Edward Teller, father of the H-bomb.
Yep.
Robert Oppenheimer is mentioned, John Wheeler. So guys who are, we just made a $130 million movie on Oppenheimer. It would be mind-blowing if he, was part of any of the UFO stuff. And there's a book by William Steinman called, UFO Crash, about the Aztec crash retrieval. And they say Oppenheimer was part of the retrieval team.
It wouldn't surprise me, because if these accounts are true, and of course I believe they are, these crash retrieval accounts, you'd want the best minds.
You would. You'd need the best
You'd
minds.
need the best minds. So,
yeah.
Of course you would.
And you have these weird, so Oppenheimer was facing this kangaroo court. It's documented in the Nolan movie. Supposedly the kangaroo court was around, his sympathies for the communists or whatever, schmoozing with socialists in the 30s and 40s, whatever. But there's a theory out there that maybe it was actually around UFOs. And so that the head of the kangaroo court was a guy named Gordon Gray, who, who knows whether the MJ-12, Majestic 12 stuff is real, the dubious kind of origins, as you're very aware of. But if it was, Gordon Gray was on the Majestic 12.
MJ-12 or Magic 12 or Majestic. This document is easily the most controversial in UFO circles. It is supposedly a briefing document prepared in 1952 for President-elect Dwight Eisenhower, explaining that a secret group of scientists and military men had been created by President Truman to study the UFO situation and to keep a lid on it.
And so the guy who might have been on Truman's, official UFO panel, Eisenhower's official UFO, advisory team, is heading up the kangaroo court, basically stripping Oppenheimer of his Q clearance. And there's some very weird quotes in that transcript as well. It's online now, and you have von Neumann defending Oppenheimer, saying, don't blame him too much. It took him a while to accommodate to the new Buck Rogers universe that we're living in. Wow. So it's like weird stuff like that. Like, why are you referencing Buck Rogers? Space travel, time travel, strange stuff like that. And then and Oppenheimer keeps saying a lot happened between 45 and 49. He keeps saying that.
Really?
And when did all the crashes happen? A lot of the crashes happened 45 and 49. And if it were really about, leakages in the Manhattan Project or socialist sympathies or whatever, that would be 41 through 45. It wouldn't have anything to do with it. So anyways.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because people often ask me, because I'm actually quite skeptical. A lot of the cases that I've reported on over the years, I didn't believe when I first heard about them. I didn't believe Roswell. Why would I believe Roswell? If an alien spaceship crashed and live aliens were recovered, how do you cover something like that up with the level of involvement with all the different military folks? That was the skeptic in me going, this is impossible, right? And one of the things I've learned over the years, over the decades, is to suspend judgment and at least listen to the testimony and review the evidence, because I have that knee-jerk reaction of, that's impossible.
Yeah. But it's good. It's good you have that.
Yeah.
Because I think you wouldn't be where you are if your knee-jerk reaction was credulousness. You just believed everything. I think it adds an element of trust for people when they watch your movies.
I think of okay, well, that old expression, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, is, that's legitimate and that's understandable, right? But I think of it in the sense of, all right, if I'm going to report on a particular incident, let's say it's a landing case, take Australia, 1966, Westall, I feel like my job as a filmmaker is to sway a jury. And I'm not trying to manipulate anybody or anything, but I want to put forth the right evidence to let the jury know beyond a reasonable doubt that something like this did occur, right? So I'm always thinking about my films as presented to a jury. Or let's say I got a skeptic in the crowd. I'm going to cater to that skeptic.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking the whole time when I'm making a film. Like, if I'm going to report on a landing case, I better have a pretty compelling story.
Yeah.
Multiple eyewitness testimony, things of that nature. Then I started to report on not just landings, but people, reporting beings associated and connected to the craft. That's a slippery slope, right? Particularly when I remember when I did The Phenomenon, I got that really big break and I got an interview with Senator Reid, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. And he wouldn't sign off on the film. I don't blame him. He wouldn't sign off on the movie until after he could see it, right? Well, I had, an alleged landing case in Rua, Zimbabwe, 1994, where roughly, there were 66 school children reported, but there were 100 school children in the playground when it happened.
We saw this like a silver thing down there. It was a silver oval thing that flew past really slowly.
I saw the bigger one and a spaceship, like 4 or 5 of them. It was red, green, and yellow.
There was this big ship. It had these lights, these patterns, and it flew.
And a lot of them reporting these little entities, and then there's telepathic communication with these little entities. Well, that's in the movie that Senator Reid is in. I'm like, he's going to take a look at this movie and go, take me out, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to do it in a way where I had that skeptic in the crowd, or I'm presenting my case to a jury, and that's how I think about it when I'm editing films.
Yeah.
I'm not catering to people that already know about the phenomenon. Of course, I want them to enjoy it too, for obvious reasons. But I'm thinking about that skeptic. I'm thinking about the one that's constantly accusing the phenomenon as only having anecdotal evidence. Well, excuse me, there's so much more than anecdotal evidence.
Beyond.
So much more, yeah.
I actually think the quote, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence is massively overused when it comes to UFOs.
Totally.
Because I think we have extraordinary evidence. And I think the better thing is extraordinary evidence requires extraordinary investigation.
Yeah.
And there are a few people, yourself included, I could name 4 others or something. It's like a very short list of people that are actually doing the extraordinary investigation, but we're oversaturated in data. We have an abundance of evidence. It's really about people's epistemology and Bayesian reasoning, where
I just got hammered for so long on that. That was like, I got so tired of hearing that, but people would say that to me all the time, and I'm like, photographic, radar, visual, all these, you call that anecdotal? That's not anecdotal. That's everything but having the craft in their possession. Right?
Yeah, no, you are told as a kid or something, this can't be real, and you're putting it a priori in this bucket of not real, and that's it. And you have to admit that at a certain point. If you actually sat down, you were locked in a classroom, and you were shown slides of these very real artifacts, all of which you've uncovered, you'd have to come out being like, okay, my base case is there's something real here, and then we have to investigate, figure out how to classify it. It's called the phenomena because it's hard to classify, but there's something going on. So I'm with you.
It's global. It's ubiquitous. It's like people would say to me like, well, what conclusions have you drawn from all the years? And because I'm coming to the conclusion that I'm probably not going to know what's really going on. I'm probably not going to ever get the full picture, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, but I doubt it.
You might.
Maybe.
Maybe you're taking on a craft and giving it download.
But one of the summaries I would give that I feel quite comfortable, the conclusion that I have reached, is that the phenomenon has the ability to manifest itself. It's ubiquitous, and it can manifest itself in like a physical form, like technologically, like an engineered craft, but also has a psychic ability as well.
Clearly.
Right? I remember interviewing this guy who was a former, I think he was a Northwest Airlines, anyway, he's actually in Arizona, and he just a real honest, sincere, salt of the earth character that was a pilot and had an incredible experience, and he goes, there's something else, and I said, well, what is it? And he goes, I don't know, I can't tell you. And I could tell he was like, he knew how ridiculous what he was about to say sounded, because he's a very pragmatic guy and just a grounded pilot, for a commercial pilot, and I said, no, give it to me. Tell me. And then he finally goes, hey, talk to me. Yeah, it was a Northwest Airlines. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember the name. But yeah, he said that. And that was like kind of the first time where I really started learning about the psychic nature. There, a lot of people have seen craft and had that communication, pretty instant communication, or beings,
It was like in the world, all the trees will just go down and there will be no air and people will be dying.
Mm-hmm. And those thoughts came to you, had you had those thoughts before this experience?
No.
No. And how did those thoughts come to you? Did they come to you from the craft or from
the man.
The man.
Which sounds crazy to a lot of people that aren't familiar with the phenomenon, but there are a lot of close encounters of the and I remind people, because I deal with one in the program, right?
Yes.
This is nothing new. There's been reports of close encounters of the third kind dating back to the early 1940s and probably millennia, right?
Yeah.
But at least modern day versions of that. And I remind people, it's like, okay, I know this sounds a little crazy. However, let me remind you that the very person who documented or researched UFO cases for the United States government, Dr. Hynek, from 47 to 69 or 70, he's the one that coined the phrase close encounter of the first kind, close encounter of the second kind, and close encounter of the third kind. So that's been going on for decades. Yeah, very credible reports.
Can we get into the story you tell in the program of a face-to-face interaction?
U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant Jason Sands was stationed at the nearby Nellis Air Base with the 67th Intelligence Group at the time.
This previous week, the UFO came on the range, flew right by what we called the schoolhouse, because that's where we did the training, and it went down into the valley and continued on. So they have actual video of it, and that's what you see out there in the public, this Nellis Range UFO.
P1 control doesn't know what type of aircraft it is either.
That's his truth.
Yeah.
We have the names of the other on-duty military personnel.
Yes.
We have a location and we have a date.
Yes. Yeah.
I opted to report on it, even though I can't prove that it happened.
Yeah.
But I think it's a pretty compelling account.
What's the location?
It was, Nellis Testing Range in Nevada, 1994. It was August.
It's pretty wild.
It's pretty wild.
I mean, you've heard, but it doesn't not pattern match to other stories. Like, I don't know if you have you heard of Colonel Charles Hall?
I was given a clearance to allow me to go anywhere in Dreamland as long as I was alone. I discovered that up there at the north end of Indian Springs Valley, which you can see on the map in the state of Nevada here in America, that there was a base which the U.S. Air Force maintained for a group of extraterrestrials who were tall and white.
Yes.
Similar sort of story, and I guess in his case, it was more these kind of tall, white, Nordic-looking aliens, but it was in Area 51, so, probably not too far. And I don't know. I mean, but that's amazing.
Holloman.
Yeah, Holloman.
I saw footage of 3 dish-shaped crafts. One of the craft landed and 2 of them went away.
Why did it land?
It appeared to be in trouble because it oscillated all the way down to the ground. However, it did land on 3 pods. A sliding door opened, a ramp was extended, and out came 3 aliens.
I did not believe that case.
And what
landing at Holloman and the beings come out and interact with base commanders. I was like, please.
And these were Nordic beings, right?
Well, they were described as like, because I actually talked to a guy, Alan Sandler, who saw the footage, believe it or not. I mean, it's amazing. And I found that out after at least a year of knowing the guy that came out. And he said that they looked like Egyptian headwear, big noses. I think he said that the eyes were vertical like a cat.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember to describe the skin of them, but they had like a device, but they didn't have much of a chin or a mouth. And they had one of them had a device that looked like what he was interpreting as a communication device of sorts. He didn't know, but that's what he said it looked like. But he goes, a lot of times if you want me to go into the story, I will.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I'll tell you this is that I did not believe what I'm about to tell you guys, and I'm sure a lot of your audience have heard about this case. It was probably in the early 1960s, maybe 64, 65. Was it 64? Yeah, I don't know the exact date. And there was a landing case that I was investigating at Socorro, New Mexico that happened April 24th, 1964. And in the process of investigating, that was one of the cases that caused Dr. Hynek to do a complete 180 on close encounters of the third kind. And I'll go back a little bit. Jacques Vallée had just met with Dr. Hynek at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio in 1964. And he was telling Hynek, look, you got to look into these cases that are classified in Project Blue Book files as psychological, because those are reports of witnesses claiming to see beings connected to the craft. And I guess they're just putting them down as psychological because they're just assuming that the witnesses have lost their marbles. Excuse me. And so he was like, you got to look into these cases. And Hynek was like, okay, you know, and he's giving some examples in France in the 50s. And like literally like a week later, he gets the phone call about the landing in Socorro, New Mexico that involved a police officer by the name of Lonnie Zamora. So anyway, I'm really sticking my teeth into that case. I'm getting to know his family, his wife. I go to the National Archives with the guy that wrote the book on it, Ray Sanford, Socorro Saucer in the Pentagon Pantry. And I come across these articles in the UFO Bulletin by a woman named Coral Lorenzen. Excuse me if I don't pronounce her name correctly, but she was writing articles about a landing that happened at Holloman right around the same time. Very, very credible reporter. She was thought in the UFO community to be very credible. Like if she put something out there, it was thoroughly researched and there was substance to it. So I read one article, and she had, I think, some military officials that were interviewing. They might have been anonymous, and then another one was a pilot. So it's two separate articles about this landing at Holloman. So that was pretty much the first credible time I'd really heard about it, right? Because I just quickly dismissed it in the past. Well, I'm going, all right, well, I'm investigating a case, the landing case in Socorro. Holloman is just a stone's throw away from Socorro, where the crow flies. I believe that the creatures, you know, that Socorro happened. It was the case that turned around Hynek. Why not have cameras rolling and have it happen just, you know, at White Sands or Holloman Air Force Base, which is really close by? So I was open to it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I watched, I'll give you the truncated version. I watched the documentary UFOs Past, Present, and Future by Edgar and Alan Sandler. And that talks about an event that may have happened or that could happen, may have already happened, or maybe it, you know, or it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about the landing and in Holloman Air Force Base, and that the beings got out and interacted with the base commanders. So I was like, this is interesting. They had
when you say may have happened or could happen,
that's the way they phrased it in the film.
Okay, so they're being a little like, you know, truth and fiction.
It was like, you know, this might have happened already.
Yeah.
Or maybe it will happen.
A little plausible deniability.
Yeah, you know. And everything else was so carefully choreographed in the movie. They had unprecedented cooperation with active and retired military personnel going on to Air Force bases. Like these guys, something was up with that movie during that time. And they had unprecedented access. So anyway, so then I get in touch with the filmmakers, Edgar. I interview him. And he's like, yeah, that event really happened. We were gonna get the video and feature it in the film. And then the last minute they pulled it, whatever. And so then I'm talking to Alan Sandler about it. And this is going on over a couple of year period. And Alan's like, well, I saw the film. Excuse me? You what? He goes, I saw the film. I said, the one at Vandenberg Air Force Base with the landing at Holloman. I said, you saw the film, and I was driving my car, and what I do a lot of times is I like to close my eyes and listen to words and have those words recreate the imagery in my brain. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like I'm reliving the experience through them, right? Yeah. So I pull the car over. I said, Alan, what did you see? I need every detail. Like, what did it look like? He goes, it might have been a training video. I don't know, but it was a real flying saucer, and there were 3 flying saucers that came in over the base. It was, I don't know what time of day, but it was daylight, and the film there was film of 3 discs at a relatively high altitude coming in over the base, and then 2 peel away, and they were escorted by military jets, and then 1 comes down. And he said it was like a leaf almost. He thought it was in trouble the way it was flying, but I've heard that description from a lot of people that it kind of floats down like that, right? So that he described it. He said it was kind of floating, and he's like, well, it looked like it might have been in trouble. And I'm thinking to myself, I've heard that before, the way it's coming down. So it comes down, and he goes, it landed, and he goes, you know, James, it was just like a sci-fi movie. You know, those doors just open, and there's no seam or anything? He said that's what it looked like. It opened and dropped, and then 2 individuals, beings, aliens, whatever you want to call them. This is according to Alan Sandler. He told me this. They came out and they flanked the stairs on either side, and then the main guy got out. And he had like a Egyptian, he described it as Egyptian. The description in the film is very similar. And a being with big eyes and vertical slits, tall, Egyptian hair or head gear, I don't know. Vertical eyes, vertical slits, big eyes, big nose, mouth almost non-existent, little slit, very small chins, and came out and he said he had a device that he thought was an interpreter, to help communicate, and that they met with military officers, and that they got into a Jeep, and then they went off, and then the film just ended with the disc just sitting there on the base. And Paul Shartle at Norton Air Force Base showed it to him because Paul got a call from a guy named Colonel Coleman. It was a guy I interviewed who was public relations at the Pentagon in the 70s. I interviewed Coleman about it. And his story, his recollection. But anyway, he had called, I guess, the base, hey, these guys are doing a documentary on UFOs, cooperate, give them access, whatever, not realizing that Paul Shartle had just processed some film of this landing at Holloman. So Paul happens to show it to Alan, and Bob wasn't there that day at Norton Air Force Base. And men in suits either later that day or the very next morning showed up, confiscated the footage, and said, don't ever talk about it. And
do you know who the men in suits work for?
No idea. I'm just telling you what he told me. And Paul Shartle, a few years later, was involved with a head-on collision with him and his wife. He was dead.
Oh, Jesus.
And so he's gone. Paul Shartle did go on a TV show. You can Google it with Bob Emenegger talking about it.
Are you conspiratorial at all about the head-on collision? Or?
I mean, it's a bummer.
Definitely a bummer.
Yeah. But and then Alan didn't tell Bob Emenegger. And then when Alan told me, I've actually got video footage of it somewhere. I did and Bob's dead now. Bob Emenegger's dead, but I did an extended interview with Bob Emenegger.
This craft came in. There were three of them. One of them wobbled down to the ground and landed, and apparently the base was alerted to it and went out to meet it. And this craft door opened, and three normal-looking, no, they weren't normal-looking, but short, 5-foot-high people came out with sort of a blue-gray complexion, and they had some sort of a headgear on, and he's describing this to us.
So Alan, I get on the phone. Was I in Florida? Anyway, I got him on the phone and I said, Bob, did you know that your partner, the guy you did the movie with, saw the landing footage at Holloman Air Force Base? And he didn't know. And Alan never told. He's like, well, you never told. Anyway, I got the two of them talking on the phone about it. But Alan swears up and down that he saw that footage.
What did you see on the film? Was it color? Was it black and white?
Was it black and white?
It was black and white.
When I saw you, be a black and white friend, but it was nothing other than what we said in the book. We see this thing, this round thing, and it wasn't that stable, funny part. And it landed, and a door opened, and guys come out looking like they were outer space guys.
I think about if I could I sway a jury at this point? I don't know. But based on the research that I've done on the Holloman landing case, I kind of believe it happened.
Yeah.
And so that I hear this other story that I'm reporting on in the program now. Yeah, to those skeptics out there, I can't prove that it happened. I certainly can't. But we have a date, we have a location, and we have 3 other active at the time on duty military personnel. Let's dig into it further.
For sure. Yes.
It's too significant. If it happened, it's too important to just dismiss because of a lack of evidence. Well, it's hard to look into something if you don't know about it.
Of course. Yeah, no, and I think widening the surface area on something and saying, I think it's true.
Yeah.
But we also need to look more into it. It's a very valid form of
right. I mean, it's like just like Varginha, I'm hoping additional witnesses will come forward, and they have.
Yeah. Well, that you have an overwhelming amount of evidence. You
didn't start off like that.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, well, let's. I want to talk about that. I mean, that's it was 1996. Is that right?
1996.
In 1996, Varginha, Brazil, became the center of a UFO incident when residents reported sightings of strange creatures and a UFO crash. Claims followed that extraterrestrials were taken to a hospital, with military and government personnel seen in the area.
1996, Varginha, which is in between Brasilia and Rio de Janeiro. And you go down there and you make this moment of contact movie, which I find just fascinating. The abundance of people in this town who believe something happened here, and then the witnesses that you interview firsthand, and some of the crazy stuff, like the guy dying from being exposed to the being. Tell me about that process.
Just crazy because a little known fact. I was doing Out of the Blue in the late 90s, and this case had just happened a couple of years earlier, and I had a partner, this guy Tim Coleman, who's a former BBC correspondent, super smart guy, walking encyclopedia, massive respect for this guy, and we were like mapping out of the Blue, and we were putting ideas on the wall, and he's like, bloody hell, mate, we got to go to Varginha, Brazil, and investigate this UFO crash. And I was like, oh, God, I think I picked the wrong partner. You're telling me that live aliens are walking around the town of a UFO crash? Like, I looked at him like, oh, God, please. And not only did I not look into it, but I refused to look into it for, I think, 10 years, maybe. So when I made the documentary, he called me up and he goes, bloody hell, man, you wouldn't even look into it back in the day. I said, you're right, I'm sorry. He goes, I was the first person to tell you about that case, and you didn't bloody well believe me. And I said, I didn't, Tim, I'm sorry. I tell you what, I'm going to give you a special thanks credit in the movie. So I gave him, even though he had nothing to do with it.
That's awesome.
The fact that he planted the seed in the 90s. And I remind your audience, like, I'm making a documentary on UFOs, my second one, and I heard about that story, and I refused to look into it because it's like, how is a UFO going to crash? Live aliens in broad daylight, walking around the town, cowering, hiding, suffering. Like, come on, man. Really? And the whole world's not going to know about that? I was like, please. Like, that's impossible. But you know what? I started looking into it. I traveled there 5 times over a 12-year period. And I walked away going, oh my God, that case happened.
Hoje a gente relembra os principais acontecimentos do caso de extraterrestre mais famoso do Brasil e dos mais importantes do mundo.
And I remember when I was sticking my teeth into it, I don't know if I should use their names or not, but a couple of very prominent researchers in the field that I have tremendous respect for were telling me, don't do this. You're going to tarnish your reputation. You're working with all these intel folks and people. You've got a great level of access. You're going to just destroy all of that by reporting on this.
Well, I think you proved them wrong. You did an amazing job, and you show, like this guy Carlos D'Souza and this Shirazi character who was he was a military officer, right? Who's handling the being who gets
did more than handle it. He just manhandled it, grabbed it. Can you imagine?
No.
Total cowboy just gets out of the car and grabs it.
And then that basically ends up killing him as a result of the side effects he sort of incurred.
He had this oily, greasy stuff on his body, and apparently, according to friends and family, he was rubbing himself down with rubbing alcohol, trying to get it off of him.
We were talking
smell and the.
We were talking about this last night with Hal Putoff. Chase Brandon wrote a book called Crypto's Conundrum. Chase Brandon is this, I think it's pseudonym for a CIA guy. Yeah, because you said he disappeared on you.
Yes.
So I think Chase Brandon is a pseudonym, and I think he's this Hollywood liaison, and he writes this book under a pseudonym, but he writes about Roswell. And I know it's a bit of a detour, but it relates because he talks about Hillenkoetter, one of the first CIA directors who dealt with Roswell.
Yeah.
And the readout on Roswell was this being, and it was emitting this sort of sulfuric thing. And the women that you interview around Varginha also say, I think it might have been sulfur. Like there was this emitting this strong odor, and in its presence, it's almost like, this like radioactive substance is like coming off of it.
A day later, they could still smell it.
And also it smelled.
It was
that
smelly.
the smell that was there as soon as you entered the room?
Yes, it was. And that's what struck me as unusual. Why that this smelly junk would be piled on the general's carpet. That was one of the few recollections that I have that didn't make sense.
I mean, the hospital where the beings were reportedly, they were done X-rays. They had to close that wing of the hospital for like weeks because the smell was so intense.
That's so insane.
Não aguentei o cheiro aqui no nariz uns 20 dias. Não sei de onde saiu aquele cheiro. Cheguei a lavar meu nariz com álcool e água para sair aquele cheiro. Forte. Aquele cheiro forte de
amoníaco.
Não
tipo
é amoníaco,
não, tipo.
não é,
Fala, Márcio.
um cheiro. Não, pior do que enxofre.
Eu não sei, porque
Um
para mim
cheiro
era
forte
amoníaco.
aqui, ó.
And all these people, they have nothing really to gain by saying this. In fact, many of them feel kind of traumatized.
If people knew the lengths that I went to get people to go on camera.
Yeah.
Like people think that they're just out there trying to sell. No, it took years. We would find witnesses and they were like, I am not coming forward. Period's not going to happen. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
I was already threatened. My family was threatened. I have nothing to gain by testifying on camera. Why would I do that?
And the highest ranking military guy that you interviewed
Guy that
had to
drove
do
the
it
damn thing around.
an anonymized version of it.
Terrified. He was like, all the money in the world is not going to happen.
Yeah.
I will not go on camera. Period. Not going to happen. Like
Yeah.
this.
How'd you get it?
Well, I was like, put me in the room with him, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are sitting here with Military X, who clearly doesn't want his identity revealed, which we're not going to do. And he's going to provide enough detail, not too much, but enough detail on operations that he was involved with the Varginha case.
I look into people's eyes and I just like look into their souls and just say, this story is so much bigger than any one of us.
Yeah.
That, future generations have a right to know, like, what is it going to take? What will it take to get you to, you know what I mean?
I'm ready to tell you everything.
Yeah.
Right now.
I do. I look deep in their eyes because I communicate on a more spiritual level
Yeah.
with people. It's like, please,
Yeah.
And I remember when I arrived in Australia, some of the researchers, and I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm really bad at a lot of things, but some things I'm not bad at. The researchers, when I arrived, when I was investigating this landing case that happened in the 60s, they're like, all right, we've been going at it for 50 years and these particular witnesses are never gonna talk, period. Yeah. I just get me in the room with them. Yeah. I got two of them to talk after 50 years. So I looked this guy in the eyes. It was so sketchy, man. We drove up into the depths of Brazil, like 4 hours into the night north of Varginha.
Wow.
And maybe 5 hours, and it was a thunderstorm, and there was lightning, it was raining, and we get up there, and there's this like bar that kind of spills out into a dirt parking lot, and I stood out so heavily, when I got there, and two guys walk over to our car, they look inside, then they get in the back, and let's go, like, all right, so they're taking us somewhere else. I don't know where they're taking me. I'm driving. I'm thinking, God, I hope this isn't a setup.
Right.
And then they drive me to some other location, and then we go to this bar, and it's outside as well. And we all talking, he's just as paranoid as I am. We were both paranoid.
Yeah.
And he's looking at me like, are you an agent?
Yeah.
Are you a secret U.S. government agent? I'm like, no, you can look me up. I've got a reputation. I've been doing this for 30 years. Like, go ahead and Google me, One
of the reasons he might have been paranoid is because he mentions to you that the body goes from hospital to hospital, but it ends up probably
going to the United States.
Comentários da época que teria ido para os Estados Unidos, que nós não teríamos condições de realmente ficar com a criatura aqui.
Yeah, so they're not just like threatened. So we meet with him. That window opens. Because people go, oh yeah, people are just trying to sell a crazy story. I'm like, you have no idea what it took to get every single witness on camera. It took years of begging and pleading, And there are still people that we've identified, people that have the footage. People that don't even have any physical evidence are terrified.
So there are people that have the footage of
no question in my mind. I've talked to people that have seen it.
How do we get that?
Well, so if I was there at the time for an extra 6 weeks, I'm quite confident I would have come home with it.
How would you have done that?
Well, because I was in touch with the people that had it, right? So the problem was, like, for instance, I'll give you an example.
Why would they not? They were freaked out?
Oh, my God. People were freaked out without any evidence. Yeah. The people with the evidence, they were terrified.
Yeah.
How did you even know I had it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Kind of thing. Like, we were about one day away from my buddy Marco going with Military X to this individual's house. I was going to go. He was going to. Marco, my counterpart, was going to go to show the footage. Apparently, it was like, it goes from as a military base into the town of Varginha and all the way back again. So they filmed the excursion going out, the alien, and then coming back again. Now, I don't know in that particular footage that the alien was alive or not, but there's other footage of the alien that was in the hospital
gnarly.
that does have footage, and I talked to the doctors that saw it, and I knew the doctor that shot it.
Wow.
He had just died of a heart attack, so we went to his wife's house. Like, it's just like so many leads. The chief of police in the area, he had a photograph, and one was alive, one was dead.
And there wasn't one person in the town who said this was a hoax or fabricated.
No. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, I've heard about it." You know, some people are like, "Oh yeah, no, I believe it happened," but
nobody in and around.
Not one person said it didn't happen. It's a hoax. Yeah. Not one person. Sorry. So I, just as this was happening, you're investigating something for that long and you're getting this close to getting, all the people that we got to come forward, the doctors, the x-ray technicians.
Foi feitas revelações e nesse momento eu não vi nem películas de filme, vi nada. Foi tudo recolhido pelos militares no dia.
The town mayor,
The mayor of Varginha, does he believe that this case happened as the witnesses are reporting it to have happened?
Eu acredito com toda certeza que aconteceu aquele fato.
The women that came within 10 feet of the creature alive.
Meu nome é Liliane Silva. Em 1996, eu vi uma criatura estranha ali. Meu nome é Valquíria Silva. Em 1996, eu vi uma criatura estranha ali.
Meu nome é Cátia Xavier. Em 1996, eu vi uma criatura estranha ali.
Those women, when you see them interview, it's just like they're not lying.
No way.
They seem kind of shy and afraid to speak to you. And
no way. Yeah. And anyway, then we're getting close to this footage. It's pretty intense. You feel like you're stepping on. You feel like you're poking around where you shouldn't be poking around. That there are extreme measures taken to keep the lid on this story, right? So you could feel it when you're poking around out there. You feel like you're being kind of you sound paranoid, but I tell you, I got spooked. I could just feel it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The military base calls the guy that we had just met with on camera, calls him up. Hey, this is so-and-so at the military base. There's an American filmmaker poking around. Did he contact you at all? Did you meet with him or? Yeah. Are you still living at this address? How's the family?
Oh, wow.
I swear to God.
They got calls like that.
Yeah. So then he got the call. Jesus. The guy that we were going to meet with now, I just put him on camera. They called him the next day.
No way.
Yes.
So how do they track that?
So
that's crazy.
Well, granted, we met with.
Who do you think it is in the U.S.?
Well,
you think they say it's like the CIA's
so
Office of Global Access?
The guy with the footage that was going to show it to my partner Marco.
Yeah.
They summoned him into the base, and I don't know how far as a military base was, but it had to be at least 4 hours from there.
Mm-hmm.
They summoned that guy in.
Mm-hmm.
So my guy, the guy that we just put on camera, who drove the alien around, was like, "You need to get out of here. Just leave us, disappear."
Do you know what happened
for
after
6
you got
months.
summoned?
No, I don't. No, because we left. He's like, "You need to leave. Wow. This is getting really heated."
Você tá bom? Joinha? O pessoal dos Estados Unidos aí queria falar com o senhor Antônio. Eu vou descer, eu não vou nem se tocar, porque vai deixar vocês aqui na bala. Pode não? Não vou, não precisa roubar problema.
And I had just confronted Eric Lopez, right? Eric Lopes. And he was the alleged driver during the second capture of one of the alive creatures where his buddy, Marco Chirizi, jumped out of the car, who was in the passenger seat, and grabbed the thing. According to all the researchers that I talked to, the military didn't say, "Hey, there's a UFO crash and aliens running around." They were like, "There's some unusual creature, and be on the lookout. It's being sighted and it's in this area." So Eric Lopes just called his buddy who was off duty. They were they were both military police, but he called him up. Hey, you want to join me? I got this weird thing I'm doing tonight. And he jumps in the car and off they go. And then they see it cowering coming across the road. Stop the car. It was pissing rain. I believe it was pissing rain when it happened. What's his name? Marco Chirizi gets out and grabs this thing, doesn't think twice about it. Just manhandles it, puts it in the car, off they go. They go to a clinic, and the doctor comes out and was like, I don't know what the hell that thing is, get it out of here. So then they go to Humanitas Hospital, and that's apparently where it ended up, Humanitas Hospital, and then the military came in. And
crazy.
But this is a side note, and if I'm going on a tangent, stop me. In 2013, UFO researcher Roger Lear, he was in Los Angeles. I was shooting in Los Angeles, and at the time, even though I was covering Varginha and I was covering the landing case in Australia, I had a specific focus that week on the witnesses from Rua, Zimbabwe. So I made arrangements to, I mean, it was like the stars aligned somehow, and they all just agreed for the first time ever to get back together after 20 years of the case, the landing case in Rua, Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And during this time,
aerial school,
1994. I think it was September, but I'd have to look into that. In any case, so I'm really focused on that and making that all happen. And people are flying in from all different corners of the world. And I remember my financial guy at the time, he's like, you mean to tell me that a UFO landed and the aliens got out? I was like, please. I said, no, I know. Trust me on this one, because it was really expensive to fly everybody. So I'm focused on that. And Roger Lear is like, I heard you're doing a document you're covering the Varginha case, because I was going to I was going to include it in the phenomenon as just one segment, right? Like I did with Rua and like I did with other cases, Socorro and things of that nature. And he goes, I got to talk to you about the Varginha case, Now, what he didn't tell me was that he was dying of cancer and that he had critical things to share with me. And I kicked myself because I kept trying to make it for him to come in, and he got upset with me. Roger finally was like, hey man, like, you keep saying you're going to get me on camera. What the hell? And I said, Roger, I'm so sorry. I've been really busy, and this is out of the blue. You approached me, and I'm doing like 15-hour shoots every day, 16-hour shoots. I'm exhausted. We don't have it, So he said, well, if you're not going to meet with me, and I was like, it's not that I'm not going to meet with you. I want to meet with you. He goes, well, at least take my tapes. I went there and I wrote the book on the case. And so he gives me these tapes, and then I kind of forgot about it. And then I digitized them, and then I sent them back to him, and then he died. And I don't remember exactly what year that was, because it was all thing went down. So then I'm shooting the film in 2021, 2022, something like that.
Yeah.
Moment of contact.
21.
Yeah. And record time, we'd done a lot of research prior to that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got those Roger Lear tapes. So I take those tapes out. I mean, I had them digitized, and I go through them. I'm like, whoa, he got this person. Oh, he did that. Oh, this is amazing. And so I'm going through them, and I was like, wait a minute, he wrote a book too. So I buy the book, I read the book, and I'm like, gosh, the book is basically a transcription of the tapes.
Yeah.
Right. And like, and met with this person, met with that person. And then not part of the tapes in his book.
Yeah.
He describes a meeting with these two doctors at a hospital that worked on the alien that was alive. And I'm thinking, oh boy, this is pretty crazy, this story. Like, really? They had telepathic communication. Like, there's some smoke started to fill the room, and there was like a telepathic communication. This is according to him in his book, right? And I'm thinking, my God, there was communication face to face with the aliens by the doctors, and everything else in the book is totally accurate because I have the tapes. Then he just goes off on a tangent about communication with these aliens in the hospital building. But so I find out, who was he with?
Yeah.
He was with Uberajado Rodriguez, who was a very prominent UFO researcher that happened to do, like at one point, he was the biggest advocate that this happened. There's no question. We have all these witnesses to
he spoke
nothing
to his daughter.
To nothing happened, and it was all just a big, blah, blah, blah. So he did, at one point he did a 180. So now the guy won't even meet with me. He's one. Roger Lear, he's deceased. And then he was with another doctor. I got a hold of that guy, and he had just died. So now, dang it, I can't verify the claims. I don't know who the doctors are, right? But had I met with Roger, he would have told me who those doctors were on camera, and I could have looked into it. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, but those doctors are still alive. So I'm going to go back.
You should go back.
I'm going back because I've got two forensic pathologists that are coming, that just came forward. So I'm going to go interview them. Apparently they have some physical evidence left over from the case. They talk about the bacteria that was on Al-Bashiri's body that they believe killed him.
A bactéria do Marco Ceres foi uma bactéria de extrema virulência, extrema gravidade. Fez curso completamente inesperado.
His body had no defense against it.
Did they say anything about the bacteria?
In my limited scientific knowledge, no, I have not gone and met with them physically, but they had communicated some things in Portuguese to my buddy, and I haven't had anything. So I need to go there, and there's other people I'm going to go meet with, and I'm going to re-release, kind of like what I did with Out of the Blue.
Yeah, sure.
Just revamp it, bring it up to date. So anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, but my point is that it is extremely difficult getting people to come forward. It's not like you just go there and everyone's like, hey, I want to sell my story. No, no, it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
And that's usually the better the case, the better the evidence, the harder it is to get the people, the witnesses to come forward. And that's just the way it is.
What do you think about this moment in UFO Disclosure? Obviously, the program is coming out soon, which is very exciting. You also have Lou Elizondo just came out with a book. Yes. I think it was released yesterday. It's called Imminent. Are you hopeful for this year? You have, the possibility that Schumer, the amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act actually passes in, a more robust form than it, got kind of diluted last year. Do you think that this year we actually make some progress? Or
Well, it's funny because, so with the program, again, I'm talking about crash retrieval. My previous film was all about a specific case of crash retrieval and the Americans' involvement. And, but again, I'm sitting there in the courtroom with the jury, a skeptical jury, and I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to present this in a way that's going to make it palatable to mainstream, right? Because this is pretty crazy. Let's just call a spade here. You want to start talking about, we have a super secret crash retrieval program that's been going on since at least World War II, right?
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
That's, people are going to go, this is impossible. So I was thinking about that when I put together the program. I was like, okay, I've got that skeptic in the audience. I've got, the panel, the jury to sway. And again, I'm not talking about manipulating anybody. I'm just talking about putting the evidence forward in a way that makes it digestible to mainstream. And I really think that we have created a very compelling case with the program that a very program like a crash retrieval probably does exist, right?
Yeah.
So that I think we accomplished.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No, I feel like you did an amazing job and did accomplish that. I mean, it's maybe a little hard for me to say because I'm already bought in.
Right. But when I have a really good friend of mine who's a very smart guy, he's a former teacher at Berkeley University, and he watched some of it and he's like, the stuff that's being said, I wouldn't even consider believing it, but it was coming out of the mouths of Rounds and Schumer and,
our most,
you know what I mean? And then I'm looking at all this data and these reports and boy, this is really hard to dismiss, Yeah,
it's incredible.
Like, you really got me thinking. And that's all one can do. I want the program to come out and get people to do more work on it, dig deeper, ask the right questions, hold their feet to the fire. Let's look at, because you got a lot of noise. Right. And it's like you got pushback from the intelligence communities. There's really nothing in it for them for this stuff to come out, but they ain't putting the genie back in the bottle. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Well, I think there's a fight within the intel community.
Of course. Some people want it out. Other people don't want it out. I get it. It's going to.
If an airline pilot has a sighting, that when he makes that report to the FAA, that it would come to Congress. But I was told that the intelligence community did not like that, and the amendment was not even heard in committee. I think it's time for this country to take back our country. We need to tell the folks at the Pentagon they work for us. Dadgummit, we don't work for them.
It's a little scary. I'm sure they have a lot of answers, and I'm sure they have a lot of things that they can't answer because they possibly don't know. Or
you know what? The status quo is scary, though. You just move forward on our current geopolitical trajectory, and it's not good. And so if you have some sort of Hail Mary in the form of like some big paradigm shift as a result of like a higher life form, just throw the Hail Mary now.
I think it's going to unite us.
Yeah.
I think it'll unite humanity.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
Do you think we'll in our lifetime, because all of these contact events are somewhat ephemeral. It's always like you have all these examples. We were talking about it at the bar the other day. You have all these examples of like these near misses where like you have in the program.
So frustrating.
I
landed every now and again.
You do. Well, you do. I mean, in the program you show like an incredible photo out of Scotland. I don't want to ruin it, so people should watch. If we were sitting here and it was like Stanton Friedman and Leonard Stringfield or something.
Yes.
They probably would have said like, we hope in our lifetime things shift on this.
Thank you, Stanton Friedman, by the way. Love you, brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We're standing on the shoulders of giants.
I cried when he died. I cried when he died.
He's genius.
Also here in Washington is Stanton Friedman, a physicist who's been involved in nuclear space and research for such companies as General Electric, Westinghouse, and General Motors. He has studied and lectured on UFOs for almost 30 years.
Such a genius. Sorry, good. Yeah.
No. Well, I'm just saying. So, actually, like Peter Thiel went on Joe Rogan. Rogan kept bringing up aliens. Like half of Rogan's shows are like fully about aliens. Yeah. He keeps bringing them up and up. And I think at one point Peter goes, you probably don't want to spend your whole life on this stuff, because if you had started doing that in the 60s, and nothing would have dramatically shifted on it or whatever. And you could easily push back and say the last 6 or 7 years post 2017,
which
and
is
the
what
revelation
I highlighted.
of ATIP, which you highlighted at the beginning of the program.
My name is Leslie Kane, and I'm an investigative reporter, and I was one of 3 journalists who broke the story in December of 2017 about the Department of Defense secret program studying UFOs. And that story was kind of a catalyst for a lot of things that have happened since.
Has really shifted this stuff. Absolutely, super important.
Right.
But do things shift in a more dramatic way from here? Because I go back and forth. There's some intuitive sense I have that in the next 5 to 10 years, we get a big shift on this. And then there's some other sense that maybe it just keeps kind of muddling along. What do you think?
Okay, I wouldn't have said this 5 years. Excuse me, I wouldn't have said this 5 years ago, but I believe the momentum is, there's a tidal wave at this point. And yes, there's pushback. And I remember people feeling discouraged after David Grusch came forward and testified under oath to a bipartisan group of lawmakers. Wow, I sat there and I watched that from my phone. It was like one of the only times my son was like, hey, Daddy, let's go play outside. Let's go,
And you're
I
like,
said,
no.
Son, I need to watch this. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm watching this live.
Yeah.
I promise, just I need an hour and a half and I'll do whatever you want to do. And I was glued. And funny enough, I watched it from my phone live. And I sat there and I remember I had tears just coming down my face because I've received so much ridicule and laughter for so long.
Yeah.
Like my whole adult life, getting laughed at and made fun of. And
Yeah.
I remember going to cocktail parties and just saying, will you do me a favor? Please don't tell people what I do, because I'm going to spend the whole night just defending it. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah. That's tough, right? Because you bring it up. It's funny when people ask what I do. At this point, I spend so much time interviewing people about the UFO thing. But at this point, like when people ask what I do, like, oh, I'm an investor or whatever, which that is a big part of my life.
Right.
But it's so much easier. It's just like neutral, like vanilla thing. Like, maybe they ask one more question. Go tech, startups, whatever.
Right.
But the UFO thing, it's like you're signing up for like an immediate, like polarizing reaction. It's probably going to be like at 30 minutes to an hour tops of you having to talk about it. You have to give this canned thing as to why you think it's true.
And a little less these days.
Yeah.
Like I remember when, 2017, New York Times article, some of the evidence, that I remember had some family members go, maybe James wasn't so crazy.
Yeah.
People that are like really close family members that are total intellectuals and they just were like.
But are there times you don't want to talk about it too? Because in either direction, it's either they're fanatic or they're,
Here's the way I feel about it now. Yeah. I feel like people will say, like, they look at me sideways, whatever, and I just say, you know what? You're a believer. And I say, well, no, it's not that. It's you either know about it or you don't.
Yeah.
Because it's not a question of believing or not believing. I mean, It's a reality. It's happening. Now, we don't have an explanation for it, or certainly I don't have a prosaic explanation for it. But it's happening.
It's happening.
And there's no question there's an intelligence behind it.
Yeah.
And it might be a myriad of different explanations. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm open to it.
Yeah.
But it's real, and there's a non-human intelligence behind it, and I'm convinced I'd put my life on it.
Yeah.
Behind that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything else there, in my opinion, is speculation. But I know, because I've talked to certain people that, according to them, that seem to be in a position to know, there are probably a handful of people on this planet that have the bigger picture. But again,
do you think that all of those people are hardcore intel, or do you think some of these people exist outside of any sort of government military classification, but they just have an expanded aperture? Well, I go back and forth because I don't know if I would, but I
I know cases that I go to locations, I meet with witnesses.
Yeah,
that's kind of like what I do, right?
Yeah,
and I don't just believe David Grusch. Like when he was testifying in those open hearings,
yeah,
it was like tears streaming down my face. So I didn't believe it just because he's under oath and he's a high-level intelligence officer. Of course, he's incredibly credible and he's an amazing human being. I believed it because what he was saying aligned with my 30 years of research.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all the different locations that I've gone to, particularly Varginha, but I've investigated Roswell too. I mean, I've been out there.
Yeah.
I went to the 50th anniversary of Roswell.
Yeah.
And the advantage I had back then was there was a lot of momentum, a lot of talk, a lot of things happening. And there were at least 20 people that were in Roswell at the time that I got to meet with when I was there.
And they were all
talking about the threats. They'll be picking your bones out of the desert. I had guys tell me this is what was said at the time. Not only will they be picking your bones out of the desert, but your family's bones out of the desert. They told me that. Lots of different people told me that.
I was just with the founder of a very prominent multi-billion-dollar, Fortune 500 company, like beyond reproach. This guy's not a liar.
He's legit.
Yeah, and he's also super humble and like out of the limelight actually as a founder.
He's like 20 years old. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, won't give any more detail, but I'm with him. We're talking, and turns out he watches the show, and I'm like, "What you watch? Like, why do you don't have time to watch about aliens?" Right. He goes, "Well, let me tell you, at the end of his life, my grandfather was in, the 509th Atomic Bomber Squadron. He was stationed at Roswell in 47. And he goes, he wasn't there when the crash happened, but he came back to base. And he came back and he said that everybody was beyond spooked, beyond a weather balloon landing, beyond some test dummy. The Air Force keeps changing their story. It's all BS or whatever. But like people were pale in the face and psychologically really messed up. And so when I hear a story like that from him, and he said his grandfather was like an old school guy who would barely talk, and he really started to come out like towards his death. And so you hear thing after thing like that, and you're like, something happened there.
Whole flock of microphones there. They wanted me to. They wanted some comments from me, but I wasn't at liberty to do that. So all I could do is keep my mouth shut.
Something really profound.
When I was making Out of the Blue,
mm-hmm.
and it's funny, like some of the things that never even make it into any of my documentaries are the things that propel me more than anything else, any other bit of evidence or bit of testimony that's on camera. I was making Out of the Blue, and the woman who owned the building where we were editing the film, when I wasn't editing at my house, we were going back and forth. She was 88, and she told, when she found out what we were doing, she told my partner, Boris, who I've made, he's been partners with me, Boris Zuboff, on all the films I've ever made since I was in my early 20s. And Boris goes, "Yeah, the lady who owns the building wants to meet with you." I said, "Really? Why?" He goes, "I don't know. She found out what you're doing and wants to have tea." I said, "Oh, okay." He goes, "I suggest go have tea with her." So I said, "Fine." Biggest regret that I didn't put it on camera. But anyway, so we meet, and she's like, "I heard you were doing this documentary on UFOs." And I said, "Yeah." And she's pouring me tea, and she's like, "I just want you to know I've never told anybody this, but it was either husband or almost husband, boyfriend at the time in the early 50s told her, he was a very prominent scientist, that a spaceship crashed in New Mexico and that there were bodies, aliens recovered. She's I was told, he told me that in the 50s. and I'll never forget. And when he says that's what happened, by golly, that's what happened. She says, I couldn't talk about it with anybody, but I wanted you to know that. I said, thank you. That really resonated with me.
Oh, of
like,
course.
Do you know what I mean? Like, why would she do that?
Why would she do that? And we were just talking.
Why would she do that?
We were driving over here, and you were telling me about Buzz Aldrin's the second man to walk on the moon.
Yes.
His sister. Yes. What did she say? I'll let you repeat it.
So, well, getting back to Roswell for a brief moment, transition over to her. But no, because it actually relates. This story also relates to this as well. So Mickey Rooney, I was working on a movie set called The Legend of Obie Taggart in New Mexico. And I was working on my first film, and I was an extra. I was a prison guard, and I get to go, whoa, so what else do you like to do, Sonny? And I was like, oh, here we go, and I told Mickey Rooney and his wife Jan Rooney and whoever else was there, oh, I'm doing this documentary UFOs, and and then Jan Rooney goes, my dad was a general in Roswell in 47. And he told me that if the truth about Roswell came out, it would have a devastating impact on organized religion. She said that's what her dad told. She's probably still alive. So anyway, they both knew Buzz Aldrin. And they're like, we can connect you with Buzz Aldrin because I remember being out in the balcony. We've been friends with him for decades. And we'd be out on the balcony hanging out, and he would tell us these crazy UFO stories. I was like, really? Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon with Neil Armstrong? Yes. We'll get you an interview. Well, while that was happening, and I was working on my first film that I ultimately sold to Discovery Channel, a buddy of mine was working as he was working as a bartender at an art gallery. They had a particular opening, and he met a woman named Faye Ann Potter, and Faye Ann Potter was Buzz Aldrin's sister. So now I meet with Faye Ann Potter at a restaurant in Larkspur called the Left Bank. We meet. She's like, my brother told me about a UFO encounter that he had while piloting a military jet. I'll be honest with you, I can't remember if she said it happened in the 50s or if it happened in the 60s, but she said he was rattled to the core, that he chased a disc as high as his plane would go, or to the point where it was going to be dangerous if he went anymore. But he was really rattled. It was a disc, according to her. Then she said the other thing that he had told her was that they were followed by something to the moon. She did not say anything about an encounter on the moon, nothing but that there was something that they encountered that followed them to the moon that did not appear, that freaked him out.
I saw this illumination that was moving with respect to the stars. We were smart enough to not say, Houston, there's a light out there that's following us.
So that's what she told me. She's like, I think I can get you an interview with Buzz. And I don't know how much more of the story you want me to tell you. Should I tell it all the way up? Okay.
Yeah.
So now I've got Mickey Rooney and his sister, Mickey Rooney and Faye Ann Potter. Mickey Rooney knows Buzz Aldrin. Faye Ann Potter, Buzz Aldrin's sister, both going at Buzz Aldrin saying, you need to meet with James Fox. So he agrees, Buzz Aldrin. And he says, well, I'm on book tour right now, but I'll meet you if you want to come to Monte Carlo, I'll meet you in Monte Carlo. And I'm thinking to myself, hell yeah. So I borrow the money. I borrow the money, I get the camera gear, get my buddy, Tim Coleman, my partner at the time, my girlfriend at the time, Samara, and we go to the south of France. Actually, we flew to Paris and we took a high-speed train down to Monte Carlo. And I was like, when I got there, I was like, oh my God, this place is so expensive. Like, the cheapest hotel I could find was like 400 euros a night.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Oh my gosh. I was like, I'm going to be broke in a couple of days. Right? So it's like, and Buzz kept like, oh, we'll have the meeting on Tuesday. It was like Monday. It was like Tuesday comes out. Oh, I got some Wednesday, and then I got to Thursday, and I was like, with all due respect, sir, I traveled all the way here just to meet with you. Got the cameras going. I'm all ready to go. and I can't really afford to stay here forever.
Mhm.
You know, he goes, okay. Well, meet me. Let's just say it was a Friday. Meet me tomorrow in the lobby, in my hotel lobby. No cameras rolling. He said to me, no camera. Don't have cameras rolling. I said, I won't have any cameras rolling. I'll meet you in the lobby. So I show up a little early. Tim Coleman, I have photographs of this somewhere. Tim probably still does. And my girlfriend at the time, Samara, sitting down at a cafe, and we're having like a croissant, some coffee. And the concierge comes over, and he says, Mr. Fox, you have a phone call? I actually speak French. One of my few college accomplishments, I learned French.
Tu parles français?
Oui, je parle comme tu peux pas savoir.
C'est bon.
Un chasseur sachant chasser son chien faisait sèche. So anyway, so he goes over and he says, Mr. Fox is a telephone call for you, Mr. Aldrin. And I said, oh, okay. I was assuming he was going to be like, hey, I'll be right down. You know, I was like, yes, go pick up the phone. I'm not doing the interview. I said, what do you mean you're not doing it? It was like, I can't do it. He's Paul Allen, just invested in SETI, and he got labeled a UFO freak or something, and I can't jeopardize my initiative. I'm working with Congress right now. I'm trying to get money to develop a rocket that's going to help put civilians into space. I can't do it.
He's implying that he has something to say about UFOs, but if he did, it would hurt his reputation.
Then he said, and how's my story going to change anything anyway? And I said, well, with all due respect, sir, people of your caliber coming forward really helps elevate this topic. Your testimony would be paramount to do that. And remember, this is in the 90s, right? Yeah, it's probably late 90s. I talked to ask Tim, but yeah, it was a while ago. And so he's like, well, I can't, I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. So that I was devastated, like devastated. Come on. Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's,
and then
that would have been an earth shattering.
Was devastated. It took me a year to get over that one. Right.
Yeah.
So then,
well, you know, astronauts sign NDAs too.
So check this out. I had, fast forward probably 10 years. And again, I have to remember exactly when. I have to talk to my buddy Tim, but it was late 90s. I'm almost positive. Anyway, I break the story of the governor of Arizona, Fife Symington.
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. That was, it was just breathtaking.
Of the fact that he saw the massive UFO that he said was just had to be otherworldly because it was over a mile from wingtip to wingtip.
This is the famous Phoenix Lights of
Phoenix Lights, 1997, March 13th.
In 1997, thousands of people in Phoenix, Arizona, witnessed a massive V-shaped formation of lights moving silently across the sky. Known as the Phoenix Lights, the phenomenon sparked widespread speculation about UFOs. While some officials claimed the lights were military flares, many witnesses remained convinced they saw something otherworldly.
So I broke that story. I interviewed the governor of Arizona, Fife Symington. We ended up becoming friends. And that catapulted me into, I mean, I got invitations onto every talk show. I mean, it was unbelievable. And Fife actually said, James is the one that broke the story with me. He's the one that approached me. He should get credit. We're going on together.
Yeah.
Whatever we do, we're doing together.
Real quick, that's such an amazing story, by the way.
Amazing story.
Because he's a governor, he's a former Air Force guy.
Yes.
And in the beginning, he sort of downplays the thing, makes fun of it in a press conference. Yes. And then he comes out later, thanks to you, saying, no, not only do I think it was real and do I believe all the witnesses, but I saw it with my own eyes, which is just so profound. You have a governor of Arizona, and McCain was asking for information on all this stuff.
And he's friends with McCain, too.
That's so wild. I mean, that's another case where it's just like, how much evidence do you need? Kurt Russell,
said he could have landed his airplane on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. He was flying around and he saw it. And so
we're going into Phoenix, and I think it was Sky Harbor, and there's these bank of lights, 6 lights, in the shape of a triangle going back right over the airport.
There's a lot there.
Yeah. Huge. So anyway, so I break this story, and the relevance of this will come in a second. I break this story, and we're getting invited on there. Jay Leno, you name it, man. We were getting invited. I mean, all these shows. So we picked Larry King, among other things. And I'm going on Larry King with Fife Symington, and guess who's in the green room?
Who?
Buzz Aldrin.
Two distinguished gentlemen, an astronaut, a governor. Different views from what you've seen.
Well, I didn't see what he saw.
I'm not sure
But you say you're waiting for people to come forward. People have come forward. High-ranking military officials have come forward and talked about the validity.
Wow. Yeah, the last contact I'd had with Buzz Aldrin was roughly 10 years earlier when he stood me up in the south of France.
Is that a coincidence? Or
No, I don't know. They invited him on. Yeah, coincidence. Yeah.
Weird.
So I'm going on live, Larry King live with Buzz Aldrin and Fife Symington. You know.
Wait, Buzz was going to be on with you?
Yes, live.
What? Larry's just like space, like UFO, like what?
I don't know. I didn't organize it, you know. But I'm looking. I got a picture of him in the group, and the woman goes, "No pictures, sir. What are you doing?" What? Click. I shot a picture of Buzz getting his makeup put on. Yeah, right. And he kind of looks over at me. I'm like, click. I got that somewhere. So anyway, So I said to Fife, I was like, Fife, oh man, I'm gonna like this. And I told him a little bit of the story, what happened, and I was like, God, he stood me up, and I spent all this money and all this effort. I flew to the South, and he goes, James, this is an iconic figure of, like, this guy is, I mean, you cannot disrespect him, and you need to, like. So I was like, you're right. He was right, and I was like, I'm going to be respectful. But I sat there knowing what I knew, and I watched him lie on television, and it was really frustrating. And I did try to call him out a little bit. And then I talked to Faye Potter right afterwards, because, of course, she saw it.
You should have called him out. You should have been like, hey, dude.
I kind of did a little bit.
We were going to do an interview, and you were going to talk about UFOs.
And I didn't know if she was going to be okay with me putting out her name on national TV.
Sure. No, you did.
Whether it was going to be cool.
You did the right thing.
But I was really frustrated. Look in his eyes, and like he was like, so I was like, I did bring it up, and actually there was a guy who did a film on it, who covered it, space film, Darcy Weir, and he found the clip on Larry King. He interviewed me about it. It was like, that was kind of frustrating. But anyway, so I talked to Faye Potter. I actually went to her 80th birthday, and she said, somebody's gotten to him. I said, what do you mean? She goes, somebody got to him. She goes, he wouldn't even talk to me about it anymore. That's what she told me. I swear that happened.
Yeah, no, I believe it.
So anyway, yeah, there's, again, a classic example of how difficult it is. Every single interview is difficult to get. The better the witness, the better the case, the more unlikely they're ever going to want to talk.
Yeah, and the more prestige the person has, the more they have to lose.
Yeah,
by going on record.
It's not a career-enhancing move for
often not.
Often not.
Yeah,
things are changing a little bit.
I think they are
recently,
changing.
Yeah,
you had Neil Armstrong. I think he was winning the Congressional Medal of Honor or something in the '80s, and he goes,
"There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers. There are places to go beyond belief."
And then he comes back, obviously, from the mission itself, and he just looks so spooked. He looks like a different
when he was
person.
in that, what's that chamber they put everybody in remember that for several days they had to be in that chamber? Just in case.
Yeah. Well, he didn't speak to anybody for 3 weeks.
The look in his eyes.
The look in his eyes is
like they'd seen God or something.
Ghost or God.
Ghost,
yeah, 100%.
Really intense. That really got me thinking too,
Yeah.
I mean,
when Edgar Mitchell, who your old friend, had a conversion experience on the way back from Apollo 14.
Yes.
And the way he describes it is so amazing. It's like he's looking at Earth and he's like, you just see how small, like trivial, the infighting and the tribalism and how petty it all is. Yeah. And it's almost like his consciousness gets elevated and he realizes just how much of a bottleneck or chokehold, earthly consciousness is, we're in this like holding pattern, and he gets like extremely frustrated about that. And then he comes back and he dedicates the rest of his life to consciousness research.
For 40 years, I've been studying the properties of consciousness, and it goes throughout all of nature and matter. And it begins with the quantum property that when particles are in a process together and they go apart from each other, they maintain their correlation regardless of where they go.
Which is just so fast. Well,
I had something really weird happen to me during the making of Out of the Blue.
Let's hear it.
So we were in the building that I was telling you about, the woman who owned the building, whose husband or boyfriend at the time, I wish I could remember exactly, told her that he was a very prominent scientist, that they'd recovered this, that a flying saucer, UFO, and aliens were recovered, and told her that in the early 50s. I'm in that building. I'm editing Out of the Blue. It's probably late 90s, early 2000. And we get into an argument, me and this guy, Tim Coleman, who I just worked with a little bit on the program. And he was like, bloody hell, mate, it's got to be like this. And I said, Tim, actually, no, I'm the director, and it's going to be, and he's older than me. And, smart guy, but I felt really adamant that I wanted it like this. And he wanted that. He got really angry. And he stormed out of the room. And because I just put my foot down. And, I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing that. And he wanted to add like cheesy smoke to a scene. The kind of stuff that one expects with a UFO film back in the day,
Yeah.
All the things I wanted to avoid.
Yeah.
He was like, he thought it would spice things up a little bit or something. And it was a hard no.
Good for you.
He got really aggravated. He left. Oh, slammed the door. Off he went. 10 minutes later, I'm sitting there. It's on the 3rd floor. There's a balcony, but I'm not on the balcony. I'm inside, still editing. I get a visual image in my head. I see him with a key, clear as day. It's like a film strip. Keying the right front fender of my car. Yes. I was so certain of it that I didn't even need the validation of walking out on the balcony and looking down on the street below. That's how positive I was. I just carried on editing. 5 hours later, 6 hours later, finished up the editing, packed up my gear, walked down to go leave, and there, lo and behold, was the key scratch on the panel that I saw. There it was, plain as day. So I called to him, told him, hey, I know you out of frustration and you keyed my car. I demand you take that back. I demand you retract that statement. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? I said, Tim, listen, I know you're upset, but I saw it. I know you did it. And I'm okay. Like, I know you were angry, but I'm not going to, go around telling it, just get it fixed and we'll put it behind us. It's not a big deal. And I demand you, like about 3 or 4 days later, he calls me up. He goes, you're bloody psychic. How do you know? I said, I don't know, man. I saw it when it was happening. How do you explain that? Right? How do you explain that? I didn't ask for it. I didn't and I have proof that it happened. I mean, I've got, it happened.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Yeah.
I knew exactly where it was.
Yeah.
It was like I was already outside looking down at my car.
Yeah.
How do you explain that? It's really weird. I actually told Hal Putoff about it.
Well, I was going to say, he could explain it.
Yeah, I know, but I told her, I was like, I had that experience.
Well, there's something about, there are 2 models of consciousness. One is that it is produced simply by the senses and it's produced locally. And then there's another where the body is a biological collapsing function on a default state of greater perception or greater omniscience. And so actually, if you cut off certain senses or silence certain things, are the
like a deprivation tank or something?
Yeah, like sensory deprivation, you sense more, not less. And so the body is like a transmitter. Like you have in consciousness, you have the binding problem of consciousness, right? You have the battery. So you have like, the occipital lobe, you have the prefrontal cortex, reasoning, you have Wernicke's area, which is reading comprehension, you have Broca's area, which is speech, you have the cerebellum, which is movement, right? We have no idea though how those all mesh together to create our seamless perception of it's almost like you're watching a movie when you're conscious.
Yeah.
And so what is that? And then if you look at the radio, a radio has its own binding problem. So you have the capacitors, the battery, the antenna, you have all the constituent parts, but you have no idea how it's playing Vivaldi's Four Seasons. And you could take out a battery and, it'll stop playing, but that's just one of the components. And in fact, you'd have to know that it's tapping into something much larger. It's tapping into, an electromagnetic frequency that's allowing it to play the actual music. And so maybe, this is something I've sort of started to get interested in. Maybe there's an expanded version of electromagnetism that allows for more wave types than just your traditional transverse Hertzian wave. And then, maybe your brain is sort of an antenna. And William James is a big fan of this. Called
Gary Nolan
transmission.
Talks about experiencers have a certain
caudate nucleus and putamen and the basal ganglia.
The caudate, putamen, basal ganglia is at the core of many of the, let's say, the more mainstream things that we were claiming even before we had our first publication, that the caudate is basically a central node involved in intuitive and other crystallized and fluid intelligence.
That could be the part that is the antenna.
Exactly.
Because when people
it's going on around us, but some people can detect it better than others, right?
And it allows you to, yes.
Yeah.
And it's the neuronal density in that area that determines your ability to do this. And it's this ability to act on instinct. So it's not based on the senses that you're picking up. In fact, that area, when hooked up to an fMRI, lights up when somebody makes a quote unquote brilliant move and go. And a brilliant move is a move that makes no sense rationally. It only makes sense in the context of a future endpoint of the person winning. So it's almost based on, their opponent making some dumb move that they somehow psychically knew about.
Wow.
And to begin with. So that part of the brain, I do think that might be a really core part of all of this.
I didn't even know that even existed. I'd never even heard about remote viewing at that point. I didn't know.
And the remote view, so you just got it down
happened
spontaneously. Yeah.
And I remember distinctly saying, I don't even need to walk out to the balcony, which was right there, and look down.
Yeah.
I would have seen it. I didn't need that level of validation because I saw it. Isn't that weird?
It's super weird. But I mean, people have like precognitive dreams. People have experiences like this. And you have in Stargate, Hal Puthoff's program, it was up for funding and defunding every year from 1972 to 1995. And every single year it got refunded.
In the 1980s, the Defense Intelligence Agency began Project Stargate.
It was top secret, actually beyond top secret.
Dean Radin, a scientist, worked on the program that employed about a dozen psychics and mediums. For what?
For espionage.
To see whether someone in the United States could spy on other countries from here.
Right.
Just using their mind.
Right.
Did it work?
It did work.
And you have to think, the amount of optical scrutiny a program like that would get, they'd cut it off if it weren't working.
Absolutely.
And you have the top guy, Joseph McMoneagle, winning a Legion of Merit for over 200 cases where he's adding to real intelligence. And then you have skeptics, Jessica Utz, who's a statistician at Stanford, Ray Hyman, who's a skeptic at Oregon. And they're coming in, they're saying, we think this is BS. They look at the data that's been, revealed post 2017, and they come out saying, we think there's something here that's unexplainable.
Well, didn't they have an SR-71 go down, or a spy plane, or U-2 or something in Africa?
Yeah, in Zaire.
In 1995, former President Jimmy Carter revealed that the CIA, without his knowledge, consulted a psychic to locate a missing government plane in Africa. The plane had crashed in Zaire during his presidency, and despite extensive satellite searches, it was still missing. The psychic from California entered a trance and provided specific latitude and longitude coordinates. When the CIA focused their satellites on that spot, they found the plane.
That's pretty incredible.
It's incredible.
They
and it had,
found it.
Yeah, and it had Russian weaponry on board. Yeah. So what are the chances? It's beyond probability. There's something here, and then it's hard. I think why science doesn't accept it is because it is not fully repeatable, and it's hard to turn into instrumentation. And you need, but you know what that means? It means we're in the Stone Age. It's like with quantum mechanics, you had black body radiation, which occurred we figured that out in the 1860s, but we didn't exactly know that light came in quanta, and so there was no way to harness any of this stuff or do anything with it. You couldn't build, semiconductors and all the stuff we use, quantum field theory for now, because we just didn't understand it.
Right.
But there's this anomaly that's happening.
Right.
It's not fully repeatable. You can't instrumentalize it, but it's a thing that's measurable.
Just because you can't explain it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
It doesn't real. In fact, that leads to the next paradigm. Anomalies lead to the next paradigm. If you read Thomas Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolution, you have to systematically look at the anomalies because that breaks the current model. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. No, it's fascinating, you know, and I'm kind of a nuts and bolts guy.
Yeah.
I have been, I am, but I'm also have had some experiences that have to get me to be open to, you know, who knows?
Well, I think it's empowering.
I mean, it happened to me. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
And I'm not out there trying to prove to anybody that it happened. Fair enough. If you don't believe me, that's fine.
Yeah, but I think it's good to share because I think 9 out of 10 people, if you actually probe a little bit more, you're like, hey, have you ever had like a really weird synchronicity that just makes no sense?
Yeah.
Everybody's had that. Unless you're completely cut off.
I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
I was with my cousin Ian on the streets of San Francisco. We were attending an older buddy of ours' 18th birthday party. We weren't with our parents at the time. Somebody dropped us off. We're going to go into the building in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco. And some creepy guy approached us and he was going to mug us or do something. I don't know what. And my cousin Ian was on one side, I was on the other side, and I was scared, man. I was 13 years old. I was scared. Something bad was happening. And he communicated to me telepathically. He said, on the count of 3, we're going to break. You're going to go left. I'm going to go right. You're going to run as fast as you can. I'm telling you, I swear. And boom, just like there was like instant, we just looked at each other and that was the plan.
Wow.
But I was in a heightened state of, you know what I mean?
Yes,
That's what happened. I never questioned it.
Yeah.
It just happened.
Yes. Yes.
But I'm telling you it happened because it's like exactly we executed exactly like the communication was instantaneous.
Well, I think sometimes studying
How do you
aliens.
explain that?
Yeah. Well, I think humans are way weirder than we realize. And there's something
we certainly are.
We are. And the variance between, I'd say, the top ape and the, you know, or maybe not even ranking, just the variance between like apes or dogs or whatever is just far less wide than the variant. Humans are, I'm sure because of the line of work you do, I'm sure you meet people all the time where it's just like, what's going on with you? You know, like sometimes in a very interesting way. I don't mean that in a denigrating way. Like you're on some sort of trippy thing. And so
it's really cool.
Yeah.
I love going around the world. I love meeting with different people, cultures, you know, languages, and hearing about the phenomenon is fascinating to me. You know, it's like, I'll give you an example. I met this Iranian pilot that had this dramatic UFO encounter over Tehran, Iran in 1975 in a Phantom F-4 jet.
The 1976 Tehran UFO incident involved radar and visual sightings of an unidentified flying object over Iran on the morning of September 19. 2 F-4 Phantom II interceptors from the Imperial Iranian Air Force reported losing instrumentation and communications as they approached the object, which were restored upon withdrawal. One jet also experienced a temporary weapon systems failure while preparing to engage.
Instead of trying to make peaceful contact with this thing that was clearly not of this world, he tried to shoot it.
Yeah.
The Defense Intelligence Agency documented the event in a great detail, and it was sent to NSA, the White House, and the CIA. The DIA assessment said this case is a classic that meets all necessary conditions for a legitimate study of the UFO phenomena.
And that didn't end well for him.
No, it didn't.
Yeah. But he goes, why?
You want to tell the audience what happened?
Yeah. So he was flying an F-4 Phantom jet. It was at night over Tehran, Iran. I want to say it was 75, but it could have been 76. Your audience got to look it up. UFO encounter over Tehran. His name was Parviz Jafari. And I remember I was working with Leslie Kane, and I was about to go down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon on a 2-week expedition, maybe even almost closer to 3-week expedition. And Leslie and I were putting on this event at the National Press Club in 2007, where we're going to have all these high-level military and government officials from like 7 different countries come and convene and talk about the reality of the UFO phenomenon. I thought it'd be a really good example to demonstrate the global nature of what's going on, right? So she calls me up, and I'm about to go down in a canoe actually a wooden dory with this guy. I was shooting a short film on this guy who helped save the Grand Canyon from like 5 introduced dams during the 50s and 60s. His name was Martin Litton, amazing guy.
Sounds like a hero.
Yeah, total hero.
Cool.
And he was greeted like a king going down the Grand Canyon, Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. Anyway, I said, Leslie, I'm going to be off the radar. There's no phones. We have a satellite phone. We're under absolute extreme emergency. If one of us gets hurt, we can have the satellite phone. I'm not going to be reachable at all. She goes, oh my God, well, we got this event. What are you doing? Parviz Jafari, he needs, and it was like some astronomical amount of money to go from, because George Bush at the time had said that it was the axis of evil was Iran. And so now they're on the terrorist list and like trying to fly in the United States. And he's a general.
Iran, North Korea, and Russia?
Yeah, I can't remember, but at the time it didn't help my efforts because I was like, oh God, now I need to fly this Iranian general in from Tehran, right? Yeah. So he had to fly to like Dubai or something for a week or two to apply for a visa, and I had to put him up in his hotel for like, I don't know if it was a week or it was 2 weeks, it was a long time. And it was like really expensive, thousands and thousands of dollars. And Leslie says, and that's not even sure that he's going to get his visa. What do you want to do? I said, so I have to spend, I'll just throw a number out there, $5,000, maybe $6,000, $7,000, whatever it was. I don't even know he's going to get a visa. And then I have to fly him out on top of all that. And she's like, yep. I said, let's go for it. Let's green light this. Yes, go. So I go down the Grand Canyon. I come out, got the good news. He got his visa. So he comes to D.C., and it's an incredible encounter. It was at night. He was scrambled to intercept some unknowns or an unknown. And he said this object was exhibiting a technology. This is the 70s that was just so far beyond his jet. Like he was like, it would be here and then it would be here in the blink of an eye. Like, and it would traverse these miles you were talking about. Like you said, it would just stop, and it was, but he got a lock on it, and he got the green light or the authority to shoot at it. Right. So he locks on it and he tries to shoot it, and his whole cabin, everything locks up, and he starts spiraling out of the sky, or he loses control. And he was like, I thought I was going to have to eject at night over, Tehran. And then last minute he regained control. But then in retrospect, he told me on camera, it was a very intimate, cool moment, on reflection of, he had all these years to think about what had actually happened. And he goes, my biggest regret was, why did I take a hostile position on this thing? I could have communicated with it in a friendly way. Like we have an unknown, and I just try to shoot it. I mean, so that was his biggest regret. You know? And it was very interesting. But there was also a psychic thing too. It's like it read his mind that he was going to shoot it. Yeah. And then it locked up everything in his in his jet. That's so wild. Isn't that wild?
Well, you hear that a lot.
But it was so worth. Like all the effort we got. But people don't know the backstory like this. That was just one out of many. We ended up making I know what I saw.
Amazing.
About for its time. Yeah.
Spielberg.
I know.
Compelling.
Spielberg.
Who is, by the way, a total UFO nut. Is obsessed with He's obviously coming out with he came out with his Netflix thing, and then he's coming out with a new feature movie with Emily Blunt, I think in the next year or two. So
he told me about Rua.
He told you about the aerial
school. Told me about aerial school in the 90s.
That's wild. So yeah, he knows his stuff.
He's like, we have a mutual friend, Janet Yang, that worked with him, and Janet, I was, of course, just young and naive enough to think that I could hey, I'm doing a documentary on UFOs. Of course, Spielberg's going to meet with me, right? And that didn't happen. But he did actually say to Janet, hey, tell him, he's doing a film on UFOs. He should look into this landing case that happened in Africa. And of course, I didn't. Because I was like, that didn't happen. There's no way a UFO could land at a school with 100 witnesses in broad daylight and the whole world not know about it. I just did not know,
Yeah.
How wrong I was.
Yeah, well, it seems like a recurring trope in your life is you just believe things when they're first told to you.
So now I know. All right, I'm not going to believe it.
Yeah.
But I suspend judgment. I'm not going to not believe it.
Good.
I will look into it. I'll review the evidence. That's why.
Yeah, it's the best way to be.
I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback, criticism for including that encounter in the Nellis test range in the desert in 94. I know what people are going to say. I'm already seeing the Stephen Green streets and I know what they're going to, they're going to try to discredit the whole film based on that. And I don't say with any definitive position that it happened. But how is one supposed to determine or dig into or uncover more evidence about a specific case if you don't know about it?
Yes.
So we got to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere. Absolutely. Right? And as long as you're honest and not shilling a thing that you actively disbelieve or whatever.
If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't put it in there. Promise you, I wouldn't do that.
No, you don't.
You know, I would
strike
never
me
do
as
that.
a guy that would do that.
No. Fortunately, I've never done any of this for the money. Of course, it takes money to survive. But
yeah, I just learned you were, while making some of your early films, you were working other jobs. You were valeting cars.
Yes,
that's amazing.
I worked at a hotel. I painted. I used to paint houses.
Thank God you persisted.
Yeah, I know.
Awesome.
And I've got a photograph of me. I'll share it with you. Not now, but during the making of The Phenomenon. I mean, that was an 8 years. I ran out of money. Had to find new investors. Disagreements with former partners. I had this one partner. He was like, "We're going to create a hybrid. It's going to be part sci-fi and part reality." I was like, "No, we're not.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen."
Yeah.
But anyway, I was doing random jobs just to, keep the cash flowing in because the investments dried up. And even though I'd made some pretty good documentaries prior to that, you think it would have been a little easier.
Yeah.
Having had, 20 years or 17 years under my belt.
Yeah.
I've made money. Every one of my films has made money. I paid everybody back 100% of the time. They were considered some of the better films out there on the topic. But no, it was not. It was very hard.
You need a Medici.
It's getting easier now.
Friendly patron.
Yeah, it's getting easier now, provided I don't get ripped off on my distributor.
You won't. Don't even say that.
Sorry.
Don't even let it enter the. You're gonna be good.
I don't want to say that because I'm not going to have a distributor.
No. Yeah. Exactly. Go independent.
I'm going independent.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah. It's exciting. So the movie last night was incredible. There's so many moments. One that strikes me, it's been talked about a little bit in the UFO world, but I think you summarize it and go into a level of detail that's just fascinating. And that's this Wilson Memo. So you have Admiral Thomas J. Wilson.
The Wilson Memo refers to a document allegedly summarizing a conversation between Dr. Eric Davis and Admiral Thomas Wilson regarding UFOs and alleged reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology. The memo, reportedly written in 2002, discusses Wilson's claims about the government's secretive programs related to UFOs, including discussions about unacknowledged special access programs.
So complicated.
Yeah.
God, I listened to Richard Dolan's review on it.
Yeah.
He's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
Listen to that. I contacted everybody. In fact, some of the people I contacted were like, I can't even talk about that one. It's like,
and this document was found at the Edgar Mitchell estate, right?
Yes.
And
I think I know the guy that found it, and I also know.
I think I do too.
I also know Antares, who is Edgar Mitchell's goddaughter. She was a model in the 90s, and she was the one instrumental in helping me get to Edgar Mitchell for the first time. So Antares, and a number of other efforts as well. I think I wrote Edgar Mitchell. It was in my 20s. I wrote him probably. This is letters, right? Didn't even read emails. I wrote, emails probably too later, but 20 letters. And I had like 20,
You're persistent.
I did. And,
That's awesome.
I'll get back to the relevance in a second, but I was finally with him at his home. We were walking he had a corral with horses and beautiful house in Florida. And I was walking with him and I said, gosh, Dr. Mitchell, like, what finally, allowed you or permitted you or made you approve to meet with me? And I was expecting some sort of profound answer. And he goes, I realized, James, that you just wouldn't go away.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That simple. That was it.
I think that's a compliment.
I didn't woo him with any kind of, no, that was it. You wouldn't go away.
There was no other way.
Yes, there have been ET visitation. There have been crashed craft. There have been material and bodies recovered.
There was no other way to get rid of me.
That's hilarious.
Isn't that funny?
What anything that I want to jump back to the Wilson Memo.
No, so I'm going to get to that in a second.
Okay,
So Antares met a girlfriend at the time that I was dating, and she's like, "Oh, my boyfriend's trying to get to Edgar Mitchell. Oh, he's my my godfather, whatever, and let me help." So she did, and she got me the interview. she's doing a biography on him now. And we were talking and she's like, yeah, that interview that you got, do you think you can make it available to me for I said, absolutely. You kidding me? Yes, you can have the whole thing. And then we're talking and she goes, Edgar Mitchell died, and right after he died, there was a flurry of activity at his house, and this Australian guy, I caught him leaving the house with like a big briefcase just like bloated with stuff. And she was looking at him like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, nothing to see here kind of thing. And just kind of just goes around her and out the door, and he was gone. That's what Antares told me. She saw that. She's like, I don't know what he went into his files, took that stuff. And then later, the document, right? And so that's, I think, the moment that document walked its way out of his house, Antares caught the guy that was an Australian guy.
Do you know the guy?
I think I do, yes.
What's his name?
I'm not going to give his name out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but in any case,
yeah,
because I was in Australia just prior to that, covering the landing case in Westall. So I met a lot of the researchers, the Australian counterparts over there, right? So anyway, getting back to the memo. So then, but at the time, I didn't really process the significance of the memo, and I wasn't really touching on crash retrieval stuff because I don't know when that memo finally went public or was leaked officially, in the sense that when did it actually become made public once it walked its way out of Edgar's house? Do you know?
I don't. Maybe fairly recent.
What year would that have been? Do you know? Because I'm only asking because I didn't put it in the phenomenon, but maybe I wasn't ready for it. I don't know.
So you have this document basically saying that Wilson is extremely frustrated, and he has to meet with Davis because he met with some corporation. The corporation has no oversight, no government oversight, and it's completely outside of his jurisdiction.
He finds a special access program, right?
Finds a special access program. They have 400 to 800 people working, but they're working on craft that is not of this world, but progress is sort of slow and it's cumbersome. And it's this bombshell document, and he's extremely frustrated. And he's like, "What's going on? Like, who's in charge here?" And he says to Eric Davis,
and he was saying, "I should have oversight."
He's saying, "I should have oversight."
They told him to kick rocks.
It's so wild.
They told him to kick rocks.
It's so wild. So what do you think that document's real?
Totally.
I think that's real. Yeah.
I would never have spent 6 months on it.
Yeah.
Because God, there's so many complexities and so many different moving parts and meetings in DC and people at that lab. There was a guy, Oak Shannon.
Yeah, Okie Shannon at Los Alamos.
At Los Alamos, verifying, who Eric Davis was, and to meet with the former head of the DIA. Like, there was just so many things, and I was like, okay, I need to condense this down. I remember my sister and I worked on this, and I watched everything I could possibly watch. I read it 50 times. I was like, God, this memo is just, there's so much to include, but I really need to kind of simplify it for the film, right? So I really just I worked very hard on that. And I thought it was a very good, and the reason why I got the level of participation, I would say, even from Hal was like, I'll talk about this because it was mentioned in open congressional hearings, and it was actually made part of the record of the congressional hearings. And I think that made Hal feel a little more comfortable to even not to say that, hey, look, I can affirm this, or but he didn't say, you know what, that's outright, that's just hogwash, nothing happened. It was like, hey, if this individual is willing to admit that, and then I talked to a bunch of people behind the scenes, a bunch of people,
and they all say it's real.
Absolutely. Again, I wouldn't have put it in the film if I didn't feel it was legit.
I think it's legit too. Do you think the corporation talking to Wilson is throwing him off? When they say the progress is slow and cumbersome, do you think maybe it's actually they have reverse engineered UFOs?
I talked to some staff members of the Senate Armed Service Committee, and I was like, well, you guys could subpoena Admiral Wilson, right? He's like, yeah, we could. I guess we could. But we talked to him, and he's like, look, I'm not saying anything at all on that. They're like, well, we're going to bring you into a skiff. He goes, okay, well, you could bring me in a skiff, and I'm going to tell you the same thing I'm telling you right here. So it's not going to make any difference. So they kind of, and I asked this particular staff member, I said, well, could you subpoena him? And I think they said that, yeah, that could be done. And not to say that it wouldn't be done, at some point, but that was Admiral Wilson behind the scenes recently.
A couple of weird, that's fascinating.
Isn't that interesting?
It's very interesting. A couple of weird things about that. That meeting took place in the parking lot of EG&G, which is where Bob Lazar, I'm pretty sure, worked.
Really?
Yeah. I think Bob Lazar.
I did not know that.
I think they found him in the records there. So that's very strange. There's some other weird connections around EG&G, like what might be going on there.
A government contractor to sort of
extremely secretive government
technologies
contractor.
And right.
I don't know exactly how they relate to this, but they've come up enough where they clearly relate to it somehow. And the other weird thing about that document is I think Eric Davis says, "Don't listen to J.A. J.A. is a liar." Do you remember that part of the document?
I do not.
Well,
J.A.?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Maybe John Alexander.
Really?
Yeah. And so for people who don't know, John Alexander is this
I've
long
had spirited
time
debates with him.
Well, he, obviously since Roswell, like knows tons and tons about.
He's all the phenomenon's real, but there's no cover up. I looked at him like, really?
Well, it's one of those things where
phenomenon's real, but there's no cover.
You're in a room and you don't know who the patsy is. You're the patsy. If you're saying there's no cover up, maybe you're part of the cover up or something. And so one fact about John Alexander that I find interesting is you covered Rendlesham so well, and I know what I saw. So this is this case of these guys working.
I looked in Rendlesham for a long time.
For a long time. Right? So this is Royal Air Force Woodbridge, right near Suffolk.
It's one of the best landing cases in all of England's history,
and you have
and certainly not. The history of that's a pretty good case.
Jim Peniston, John Burroughs.
I'm the only person to have interviewed Cabansag, Burroughs, and Peniston. All the three guys that went out that night to investigate that. And Cabansag got cold feet when I met with him.
And I hear Burroughs has sustained some weird possible injuries. That
Cabansag got close to the craft and he got really freaked out and he apparently stayed back. But anyway, carry on. I'm going to interrupt you. Very good landing case.
But a very good case that's worth looking in. And Colonel Charles Halt looked into this stuff and came to the conclusion that there's something here. And the crazy thing about the whole story that relates to Alexander is I think John Alexander gave the readout and knew about this before anybody in the U.S. Yeah. Yeah. So there's some.
How do you know that?
I heard about this from a friend who's incredibly well
connected.
Yeah.
Somebody that you hold up.
Yeah. Very high esteem.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
interesting.
Yeah.
That's funny because we were shooting in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And John and I have had great, dinners together, and I'll tell him exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
You're wrong. I'll say I think I could prove in a court of law that you're wrong.
Yeah.
With overwhelming evidence.
Yeah.
And he, but then he was on set in LA when I was telling you I was filming stuff in LA. He was on set. And again, I like John Alexander. I really get along with him. I mean, in the sense that, but I tell him to his face how I feel. I disagree with you strongly. I don't think you're correct on this one. But then there were people on set. They're like, who's this spook? I'm serious. They were like, "Who's this spook? This guy's spook. He needs to leave."
Are there any?
He's just poking around on the set.
Are there any people you can definitively say are sort of bad actors in modern ufology? Then I know maybe I don't want to. I'm trying not to be negative or overly negative, but just for the audience's sake, around who should, if you're new to this stuff, who should curate information for you? Is there anybody to look out for as to, maybe steer clear, maybe avoid, maybe look at a little more skeptically?
Here's how I feel about it. Anybody making definitive statements as to exactly what's going on, I'm highly dubious of.
Oh, it's for sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do. Yeah.
You tell somebody it's like, I know exactly what's going on. I'm like, really? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I'll be the first one to tell you I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. Same.
I have a little tiny idea.
Yeah. When people say this many 6 races.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't look. I'm starting to cover Close Encounters of the Third Kind only recently in my long career.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope, and those claims require evidence,
And even the people who've seen these things firsthand, though, don't know often what they are. They go, this is unclassifiable.
And there's nothing wrong with admitting just because we can't explain it doesn't mean it didn't happen, right?
Yeah, no.
Or it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so I was telling you earlier, I've learned to be open and to suspend judgment and listen to the testimony and dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
Again, that's why I'm including a controversial case. It's going to be a case that people are going to have trouble with.
Yeah.
I know that. But it's like, hey, You know, these guys were on duty. Again, we have a date, we have a location, and we have the names of the other witnesses. Hopefully more will come out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean,
no,
in terms of John Alexander.
Yeah,
you know,
and I don't know. I don't want to accuse of any. I don't know, but
you know,
but there's. I think there may be an interesting
I'm
thread
always
there.
highly dubious of people that say they have all the answers. There's this many races. This was happening.
Does Alexander say that stuff?
No,
Okay.
no, I don't think he'd go that far. But there are people out there that make those
Yeah.
assertions and stuff. And
Well, it's like Doty would say. This guy, Richard Doty, who we now know was counter
he
intel
admitted
for the Air
right,
Force.
yeah.
Like he admitted, like he would throw people off the trail, and he
Right.
would speak insanely definitively about, we have this many races, and like, these are the.
would?
Yeah, John Lear would say shit like that,
muddy the waters.
which makes me, again, John Lear. I don't know if he was like an agent or a useful idiot, but like he was a disinfo arm or extension, clearly to me. Like he was, and he was Bill Cooper, guys like that.
Pale White Horse.
Like,
yeah.
let me tell you how
That
the government
had to
works.
be.
You have the
Yeah.
aliens. Come on, like, and there can be bits and kernels of truth in a lot of this stuff.
Well,
but
look, I'll give you an example why I never believed Holloman, and I didn't even look into it for a long time. And that's because they were like, oh, yeah, President Eisenhower had a meeting with an alien. Really?
Yeah.
Maybe that was deliberately put out there to throw people off the trail that a landing did happen at Holloman Air Force Base. Now I'm kind of convinced that it did.
Yeah, well, often the best disinfo is slightly adjacent to the truth. So what you'll do is you'll say,
put out some wacky stuff in connection to
something wacky actually happens. And then you'll put out a wacky thing that's like right next to it. Then you'll debunk that thing definitively, and it's like that's over.
And then it takes the whole thing out.
And it takes the whole thing
Yeah,
out because
like
you can't speculate at all on
Left at Eastgate, I think it was. What was a book written about that there was actual contact with aliens at Bentwaters in 1980? Now, all the key players that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of them, General Gordon Williams, Deputy Base Commander Charles Halt, Peniston, Burroughs, Bansag, nobody, and other witnesses that are in, I know what I saw. No one talks about aliens. None of those guys.
Yeah.
Okay. No one. But then one book came out that there was alien contact.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And that threw everybody off. It's like, oh, yeah, they met with aliens. That is a prime example, in my opinion, of disinformation to throw people off the trail.
Absolutely. And often these things are put out in the worst outlets. So it's like, why is the Daily Mail getting like the first stories? Like they're like the CIA's Office of Global Access has I also think they systematically use marginal, like weird fringy outlets that aren't super believable when it comes to putting out actually very good credible information, and that way you can retract it if people don't
not the most
take
credible
it seriously.
source.
It's not
right?
the most credible
Yeah.
source. So you have the Daily
like tabloid
Mail
reporting on something that really happened.
the Daily Mail reporting about, an egg-shaped UFO from Area 51 a year ago. You have them reporting on the CIA's Office of Global Access being the main, part of the crash retrieval program all around the world.
Wait, what did they say?
In the Daily Mail, they say that the CIA has this Office of Global Access.
CIA did.
Yeah. Yeah. And so no, it's fascinating. And so, I think that is a strategy. I hate talking about Epstein. I won't after this, but I do think this relates a little bit. So Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yes. She's in prison now.
She's
right?
in prison now.
Right, yeah.
Her father's Robert Maxwell, this, MI6 Mossad affiliated, kind of definitely.
That's a fact?
Oh, full fact. Yeah. And intelligence associated guy. Yeah. And he was kind of always a rival of Rupert Murdoch, like Murdoch, and he would always kind of go at it because he owned a lot of, various, he owned the Pergamon Press, a bunch of textbooks actually in the U.S.
Well, he was a big player.
Big media magnate for sure. Oh, and he would have these lavish birthdays in the 80s and you'd have like all sorts of, really famous people show. Weird. He owned the National Enquirer. And so I always think it's like if you were trying to like marginalize a thing or actually condition people into like believing it,
right?
Or
Just
put out the adjacent theory and then like be able to retract it, test the waters, do whatever.
Right.
You buy a publication like that and you can do whatever you want, And so I think that stuff is used strategically.
Why did in 1972 two relatively unknown filmmakers get this unprecedented level of access? making of UFOs past, present, or future. I mean, anybody that looks at that film, I mean, they've got full access in the military, active.
You're talking about
Bob Bennigan and Alan Sandler.
But wasn't Rod Serling?
Rod Serling.
Oh, it was 74. Yeah.
Narrated it.
Yeah.
But it's like that.
Well, they were approached by the DOD.
They basically, but they basically admit in the film that it's real, and they put forth some really crazy, like, accounts.
You know,
contact. Look,
yeah,
they're saying contact.
Yeah,
with active military at Holloman Air Force Base in 1972 or 74, whatever it ultimately got released. Like, who was behind that?
I'm a little skeptical of it, and the reason
skeptical of who's behind it, or
no, well, they were originally approached by Nellis Air Force Base, and they were, I think, promised that they would be shown a UFO.
Well, yeah, they were given one bit of footage, which he still has to this day, and that is a launch at Vandenberg Air Force Base of an Atlas rocket.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two discs that are flying around the tip of this Atlas rocket while it's doing thousands of miles across the sky.
How do we get the video, James?
I know. I'll play a recording from Alan about it.
Yeah.
But he's like, if you get 25 grand, this is like 2013, 2014, you get 25 grand, I had to put the money into an escrow account. Then I go to his house, and he's going to show me the footage. And if it's not everything he said it was, I'll get the money back, And if it is, then he gets the money, And then I got the money together at the last minute. Nope, not going to do it. And so I went coincidentally multiple times since then, and I met with him at his house, and he's got the footage. And I was like, "So you're just going to die with this footage, He's like, yeah, probably. He said, my lawyers, I have nothing to gain. I'm a wealthy man. I'm retired. Like, I'm not going to risk stepping on. I was like, well, then why don't you give it back to the government? I know some people that could, so that's.
I don't know. So it's always.
But it's not the Holloman landing case.
I know.
Still, it's a pretty good.
Totally.
2 different camera angles, I've talked to people that have seen it.
But something inside me thinks that maybe the Air Force or the DOD decided we are going to flip into being vaguely pro-UFO, at least in the ET, extraterrestrial context, in the early 70s, because you had the Condon Commission sort of basically just kill Blue Book. That's 66 to 69. Then nobody really talks that much about, any of this stuff. And then
you were saying that Edward Condon, that he was
he
part
wrote
of a panel in what year was that?
So
50s,
this is the crazy
I never
prehistory
heard
on
that.
Condon. So Condon was good friends with Oppenheimer. In fact, they studied at Göttingen together in Germany in the 1930s. So they had known each other forever. Condon is from Alamogordo, so he helped pick Los Alamos as the spot for the Manhattan Project.
He wrote for sure.
For sure, fact. He wrote the Los Alamos Primer, which every single employee of the Manhattan Project had to read upon arrival. Then 6 weeks into the Manhattan Project, he falls out with Leslie Groves over issues with like over compartmentalization and secrecy, which is feels like this weird thing. It's like, he's so close with. He wrote actually the first English language textbook on quantum mechanics. He's just a renowned physicist, and he's so close with Oppenheimer, and it feels like this bizarre sort of story. And then he goes on to work on civilian outreach when it comes to kind of nuclear initiatives. So obviously with nuclear, you need nuclear physics as like an academic program, but there's some trade secrets around building the bomb that you want to keep secret. In 46, he writes the McMahon Secrecy Act. And this is, at the time, the most important sort of protocol when it comes to secrecy around nuclear trade secrets. In 1954, the Atomic Energy Commission gets formed.
DOE.
And the DOE gets formed, exactly. And that's basically, Oppenheimer, Sarbacher, and they're creating, they have, special definition of nuclear material is basically anything emitting any sort of radiological properties, alpha, beta,
into a
gamma.
whole different classification.
It's
right?
it's born secret.
If you actually read the Atomic Energy Act, if something is not a nuke,
but it has radiological energy coming off it, you know, alpha, beta decay, whatever.
Same secrecy.
Same secrecy.
And so it immediately falls into this sort of DOE classification system.
Completely free from oversight, isn't that right?
Completely free, yeah, completely as compartmentalized from, like, you know, civilian government. So you have, you know,
So if
NPQ.
you want to keep that being super secret,
It's not TSSCI, it's NPQ. It's an entirely different classification system. And, you know, it's all occurring in these incredibly sensitive areas as well, because the crashes sort of mostly occur there. That's a little known secret and that you are very aware of. And that language for the Atomic Energy Commission is using the McMahon Secrecy Act of 46. So
Condon wrote.
So Condon is basically writing up UFO secrecy before he then debunks the entire thing. And this is okay. It gets even deeper. I don't know how much you want me to keep.
I found
going,
really good color footage of Condon for the phenomenon.
Incredible.
That little smirky face he had on when he was.
It's so cynical.
I was like, this guy's mind's made up. I know exactly where this is going.
Well, his members of his staff are saying that they, you know, actively are not taking anything seriously.
Yeah.
He's meeting with Air Force Colonel Robert Hippler at the time, and Robert Hippler is saying, please show this as a waste of money so the Air Force can stop paying for this. And there are letters, there are transcripts that we have now between the two. And here's where it gets...
Killed it for so long.
Here's where it gets so weird. So there is an FBI field agent named Guy Hottel. He's a Washington field agent. And the #1 memo on the FBI's website, the most searched for memo, is called the Hottel memo. And it's basically describing an Air Force technical officer coming upon a craft that has crashed, and you have the crew intact. And so it's, you know, this guy's claiming that there are aliens inside this craft who's crashed, and it's on the FBI's website. So you're like, what the hell is this? And it's a memo to Guy Hottel. So Guy Hottel is a guy who clearly is aware of the UFO issue. And Guy Hottel is investigating Condon in the early 50s, right around the time that Oppenheimer gets his Q clearance stripped. Remember, we talked about that earlier. Condon has the same sort of kangaroo court process, and he gets his Q clearance stripped as well. And so it's this crazy thing where, you know, maybe it actually...
Guy Hottel, what was his...
So he's investigating Condon. Oh, I missed that detail. So he's creating a dossier in the background on Condon, and Condon is getting his Q clearance stripped. So you have a UFO knowledgeable FBI agent creating a dossier on the guy who wrote up UFO secrecy. So
you can't make this stuff up.
Can't make it up. So Condon then doesn't have his Q clearance for the longest time, till the Condon Commission 66. He's out of the government. And this guy named Lou Branscombe comes to him. Lou Branscombe is on the Jason Advisory Committee, and he is studied under Don Menzel. Don Menzel is the #1
skeptic,
UFO skeptic, debunker, but he's also rumored to be
the deepest in the know,
on the Majestic 12 or whatever equivalent committee or whatever.
Stanton Friedman was a real advocate for that. He goes, if it's not called Majestic 12, there's a group just like.
If it's a legitimate document, it establishes 1, that a flying saucer crashed, 2, that the wreckage was recovered, 1947, 3, that the government has successfully kept that secret since that time, 4, that a very high-level group, including, as it happens, the first 4 directors of Central Intelligence, first Secretary of Defense, etc., was set up, established to deal with.
He was convinced of it. He was
those were all the guys who were like, would be. So Menzel is this, you know, kind of, you know, incredibly smart astronomer. He's at Harvard. And he works at the, I think, Bureau of Public Standards as well, on, you know, like the time zones, like that sort of thing. You know, so also like the kind of public astronomical data at the time. So his understudy, this guy Lou Branscombe, who's on the Jason Advisory Committee. So it's, again, deep as it gets when it comes to larger, you know, American defense policy, goes to Condon. And Condon even talks about this. There's a transcript where Condon is talking about this in an American Institute of Physics interview. And he says, hey, you know, maybe it's time you get your clearance back. And Condon's do
a little job for him.
Yeah, literally. That's like
the finishing
no
touch
reason
on that
given.
secrecy document that you wrote in the 40s.
Exactly. No reason given. He's just he's given his Q clearance back. It was probably like, hey, we have all this compromise on you because Guy Hottel has it. So do your job. He comes back. He ends up at the University of Colorado Boulder, and he does an absolute hit job on
Total
UFOs.
hit job.
And it was
inconsistent with the data within the body of the report.
Completely inconsistent.
Right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
It's like they just wrote a summary, basically hoping that the media wasn't going to do their job and sift through the actual cases that they determined that UFOs are real. It's not all UFOs. Are any UFOs real?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was a brilliant job, and it killed. That was it. It all fell apart, and it took so long. But I want to get back to, you mentioned that Guy Hottel's FBI memo. There's another FBI memo that was extremely popular on the FBI's website. I featured it in Out of the Blue, and honestly, I don't know if it's still floating around on the FBI site. It probably is, I would imagine. But it's in, is it Eisenhower's own handwriting? No. J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover writes, and there's multiple interpretations of this because it looks like S.A.
Yeah.
Or it could be like a W that wasn't written quite right. They're just not quite sure. But it says,
former director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, was also denied access, as he stated in his own handwriting in July of 1947. We must insist upon full access to discs recovered. Hoover continued, the Army grabbed it and wouldn't let the Bureau have it for cursory examination.
And it's in J. Edgar Hoover's own handwriting on this document. It says, as in, take the SA or SW, could be Southwest, and don't know. Case, it was a crash disc. The Army grabbed it and wouldn't let us have it for cursory examination. And it was written like 5 days or 6 days or a week after Roswell. So that was, did you ever see that?
Wow, no.
It's in Out of the Blue, and you could, and I actually put at the time in Out of the Blue. Of course, that's changed now because that was probably late 90s or early 2000s, probably late 90s. And, but that was the document that was on the FBI's own website. And I remember staff members of Congress at the time, because it was right around 2000. I went around and I gave out copies of Out of the Blue to every single member of the House and Senate. It's 535, and every letter was personally addressed to their chief of staff. So that was like a lot of work, right? So I wrote like a kind of a template letter, and then I had 535, and at the time it was VHS tapes. That's what they used. And I had 535 VHS tapes that I gave out to every member of the House and Senate.
Oh,
right?
God.
And one of the documents that they were most impressed with, I had a conversation with some of the staff members at the time, but they're like, that FBI memo. It's like, oh my God, it's right there in black and white. You know, if we could just figure out. And apparently at the time, and probably it's changed since then, but it was one of the most popular memos or documents on the FBI's website that was downloaded all the time. That's why when you said Guy Hottel, I was like, oh, yeah, I don't remember that.
It's so fast. It is, and it is interesting because you mentioned maybe there is something more to the Majestic 12 documents. Well, you now have Dulles' diary coming out, and it says on the day that, you know, Eisenhower was supposedly sort of briefed on this stuff, it says, you know, meeting with the president or whatever. So this stuff, it comports in such a, you know, kind
Probably
of
a lot more coming out
very
too.
specific way. You think so?
Well, because people are digging for it now.
Yeah, people are digging. The
You know what I
surface
mean?
area
It's
is
starting
growing.
to come out.
Yeah.
I mean, look, like I remember watching Lou Elizondo on 60 Minutes, and you know there was this sort of incredulous look on the interviewer's face, and Lou's like, "Look, I'm not telling you they're real.
Yeah,
the government just admitted that they're real."
The government has already stated for the record that they're real. I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that.
The phenomenon is real. That's done. We're moving beyond that, you know? And that happened. That's why I said earlier in the show, it's like you're not putting the genie back in the bottle. Like, you can't make that statement. The implications are so profound that if all that is true for all of humanity, there's no way we're just going to sit on the sidelines and just ignore, you know what I mean? Like, keep digging. I remember I posted something on X and Twitter X, I don't know, maybe it was like a year ago or something, and people were really discouraged because, you know, David Grusch comes forward and says all the things he says and it's amazing congressional hearings, and then it seemed like we almost kind of went backwards a little bit, like they did a hit job on Mr. Grusch.
Yeah.
There were some denials, and you know, and I said, everybody calm down, because people were really freaking out. I said, I've seen this pattern, you know, increments, nothing like what I've seen in 2017 now, but hey, I've seen efforts to get this stuff out, and we are making progress. There's no question about it. I mean, I remember in 2007, 2008, there was a release of previously classified documents of the British government, the French government. They started releasing stuff. There's stuff coming out. There's press conferences. There's things happening. And now, that has escalated between 2017 and today, 2024, exponentially, in my opinion. And I just tell everybody, like, you know, those who are feeling discouraged, don't worry. We take one step back, 2 steps forward. There's going to be pretty significant progress, in my opinion, in the next 5 years. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't like at least a disclosure in the sense that, and I've talked to government insiders about this, the plan is, for when I say full disclosure, they say they're not going to give up the technology. That's not going to happen. They might be an admission of having some, but that there is definitive proof that we're not alone. Now that, I'm told, so, by 2030, am I going to sit there and make a prediction that's absolute fact? No, I'm not. If I had to guess one way or the other, did you?
I bet Mick West $10,000.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Which is such a stupid bet. If you were to have, like, I should have 100,000 to 1 odds, but I just bet 1 to 1.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, because I believe that. I believe what you're saying.
Did you guys put the money in a joint account? So if
we like wrote up something, and I don't remember if it was signed or gentleman's thing.
Talk to the Mick Wests out there, because there's people. I'm going to be under attack. Everybody's under attack. Fair enough. I've seen this before. This is nothing new. In fact, there's a lot less of you today than there was when I first started in the 90s. I had everybody attacking me.
I think it's good, and it causes us to like raise our game or whatever. And I think it's fine.
Hey, look, I don't blame them. I get it.
But it's like. The issue, I just debated Michael Shermer. You know Michael Shermer?
I debated him on Larry King Live.
Oh, there you go.
If UFOs, when I use the word if, were buzzing around in our airspace, who would be best equipped to know about it?
Well, our government, perhaps.
Military?
Maybe.
So we've got the highest-ranking military officials in the world telling us right now that these things are real. We've got generals, we've got admirals, we've got colonels, we've got presidents, governors.
But it's the same thing.
I laugh about it too.
I'd love to hear your experience, because it's like always like you have this data set that they don't have.
Yeah.
And you're like, look into that, like look at this, but you can't right now because we're in a live debate setting. And they always say, oh, I'll look into that. And then they have these like armchair smug, like,
oh God, it makes me, doesn't it just irritates the heck out of me?
Yeah, it's irritating.
I'll see this little smirk on their face and they're like, it's all anecdotal evidence. I'm like, radar, photographs, visual confirmation, ground radar, air-to-air radar. Like, that's not anecdotal. I'm sorry. Okay, I might not have the disc in my possession. Maybe they do, but that's really compelling evidence. That's like all the sensory data that the military has.
Yeah, well, like in the case,
that's not anecdotal.
It's not anecdotal. In the case of Nimitz, it's like multi-sensory. At the very least, it's FLIR, which we have, but it's multi-sensory. Yeah. You have 11 or 12 witnesses. You have 3 days.
Four people in planes put their eyes on it.
4 people in the planes put their eyes on it, and like dog fight. There was like a dog fight with it or whatever, and so. To say that that's just your eyes playing tricks on you, no, you either have to figure out that we have next level spoofing tech, like that's on you. Then it's either that or the thing is real and worthy of investigation. But
look, the history of it, like I did in the phenomenon. One of the things I really wanted to do was settle that debate once and for all.
Mm-hmm.
There is irrefutable, in my opinion, and the opinion of anyone that's looked into this, irrefutable evidence, irrefutable data that there's a technology that exhibits characteristics that are light years advanced, than things we had back in the 40s and even today. And what I did at the end of the film was I would put testimony from people that had sightings in the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way up to 2004. And all the pilots are describing pretty much the same damn thing. Had the ability to hover, accelerate from a standstill to out of sight in the blink of an eye, right angle turns at high speed, without any sonic boom, without any wake, without any real visible means of propulsion. All these things.
Yeah,
that's observed. That's 75 years easily. I could prove that in court.
Yeah.
What exactly is it? It doesn't appear to be us. It's not the Russians, not the Chinese. Guess what? I went to Russia in the 90s. I interviewed generals in Russia. I interviewed military personnel. I interviewed civilians, witnesses in Russia. I've done the same in China.
Apparently in Russia, they would use nuclear material to bait UFOs.
Got to Russia, and I remember sitting down with this admiral, and he said to my interpreter, he's like, look, if you're here to ask me whether or not the phenomenon is real, the door's right over there. I'm here to talk about the implications and opening the doors to a possible communication with international communication, like an exchange of information on an international level is what they're interested in, and in China, I mean, I was observed technology. It's global, man. And the Americans are like, oh well, it could be the Russians. I was like, hear that? Oh, it could be no, it's not the Russians.
Yeah.
How do I know? I've been there.
Right. Yeah.
They're shrugging their shoulders just like we are.
100%.
You know?
And this stuff, I mean, you really have to go back to like 40s and 50s around our most precious nuclear assets.
Yeah.
There's no shot. Like now, yeah, we might have like, you know,
I have to hand it.
Drones that are flying, you know, really fast.
And of course we've got things that are misidentified as UFO.
Yeah. But at that time we just didn't have anything close. You didn't have DARPA. DARPA was, I think, the early 70s or like late 60s. There's just no chance. We had like the XP-80. Like I'm just thinking about our most advanced, you know, flight tech at the time, and it just wasn't even close.
Well, okay, this is really kind of it was sort of a natural say realization. I'd heard about the connection with nukes and UFOs, kind of a little bit, you know, brushed the surface, whatever. When I met with Senator Reid, and it was funny because, you know, he sat down, and I think they said he's got like 46 minutes, you know, and then he's out of here, you know, very, you know. So I got down to like having like 3 minutes left of his presence, and I said, "Oh God, I forgot to get a walk and talk. I need a B-roll shot," and didn't have time for. I was like, "Oh," and the security details looking at me and a make it quick kind of thing. Like, okay, let's hit this hallway. You know, we hit the hallway, and I'm like, well, I'm walking with the former Senate Majority Leader, who, you know, spearheaded this whole program. I should ask him a question. So I said, "Hey, what was?" And the audio wasn't great because I don't think we were mic'd at that point. I said, "Hey, what was one of the more," I think I said, astonishing aspects that you uncovered during ATIP and during your efforts to, you know, investigate this stuff? And like immediately, without a pause, he goes, "The fact that they're shutting down our nukes," basically.
Yeah.
That's when I got in touch with Robert Hastings, and I was like, I got to cover that in the film. So I went back, and I remember being
that's such a powerful part of
such a powerful thing. And I remember in Hastings, thank you, Robert. He was amazing. The level of access he gave me, all of his material. He was like, "Go," you know. And gave me all of his material, and I think I compensated him by helping him build a fence in his yard in Crestone Valley. It's really cool. Any case, my buddy Lance Munja was in the edit room with me, and we're listening to all these different accounts of sightings in and around like New Mexico and other surrounding states. And he goes, "James, why don't you get a map out? Let's put the map on the wall. We're going to put a little pin where all these are happening." So we did that. And I was like thinking to myself at the time, like, who do you want to get a map for, you know? But he was dead right. So every time we get to an archive interview or a case, in goes the pin.
Nuclear.
The proximity to Trinity's site was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, here's Trinity's site. It was like, dink, 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 dink. You know
No, the nuclear connection shows up if
absolutely.
I mean,
you know?
it's like the Nimitz, you know, carrier strike group or whatever.
Isn't that a nuclear?
Well, most it can't say for sure because it's classified, but it's most of these things have nuclear, have tactical nukes on board. So I don't know.
Tactical nukes on board.
Oh yeah.
Is it nuclear power too?
It might be. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they have.
Yeah, because they can stay out to sea forever.
So there's that. There's a town in Japan.
Nukes on them.
There's a town in Japan called Lino, which is in Fukushima, which is famous for its 2011 spill. And for nuclear spill, they have a civilian nuclear grid.
Is that when that happened?
2011, yeah.
Huh.
And they have a town dedicated to UFOs where, like, you know, a very high percentage of the residents believe in UFOs. You have a museum around UFOs.
In Japan.
Vice made a documentary on this in like 2020.
空にこんなものが目の前に張り付いてた。一歩踏み出して見たら消えて。
Yeah, you have Bariloche is a nuclear energy grid
and UFOs buzzing over the air.
Argentina in '95, I believe. There's a famous UFO case around there. So it's one of these things where, you know, this is how I take skeptics down the rabbit hole. You go Robert Hastings, UFOs and nukes, or the phenomena, nuclear connection section. You know, one of those things, because it's this beautiful, like it's like the most credible witnesses.
Super compelling.
It's super compelling. They're taking out the NSA uses the top cryptography for all of the, you know, nuclear armament and disarmament. And the idea that they're just like taking down silos is absolutely insane. In fact, in 2010, Wired wrote an article about F.E. Warren, where there was an outage in F.E. Warren. It was this big story just because, you know, one of our nuclear sites went down, the power went out for an hour. And Hastings, after he had retired and written UFOs and Nukes, back channeled to the missileers there. And they were like, yeah, there was a Tic Tac flying around. That's what caused the outage. So,
well, I got a story from Minot. Well, I won't go into too much detail, but Minot Air Force Base.
Wherever they come from, somebody is in Minot shutting off the missiles.
So there was a guy, we started researching. Another reason why we got, what footage was that interview? Yeah, he did a project called like Project Sign or Project Archive Sign.
The overall effort to study saucers was called Project Sign, with headquarters at Wright Field in Ohio. In 1949, Sign personnel wrote a top-secret report concluding UFOs were extraterrestrial craft. When the report made it to the desk of Chief of Staff General Hoyt Vandenberg, though, he rejected it and ordered all copies burned. This rejection from the top was, in the view of many, the death knell for objective study of UFOs.
And he went around in the 80s. I don't know if it was early as the 70s, but definitely the 80s and 90s. And he interviewed all these critical witnesses from like the 50s and 60s that were in their twilight years. And thank God, because he got interviews that, quite frankly, nobody even knew existed. That's why when you get like an historian like Richard Dolan, who watched the phenomenon, he goes, God, I never knew that archive footage existed, or there was an interview with so-and-so or this person, you know? And I got in touch with this guy, and he's to this day is sitting on interviews from, well, the interviews were in the 80s, but the incidents occurred at Minot Air Force Base, and I want to say in 66, or it could have been 68. They were separated by miles, right? And at night they had to, when they were working on these things, they would have one guy down in the hole and then another guy, armed guard, standing there, armed guard, protecting while the guy's down there with the silo open working on it. And it was like 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, and a UFO came over the base and apparently was like hovering, and the guy was screaming like, it's landing, it's a UFO. It's like a orange, you know, orb coming down, landing, and the guy in the airplane, I guess it was a guy in an airplane flying over the base, and he could see the UFO landing. He interviewed that guy, the pilot. He interviewed the guy that was, you know, the armed guard that was watching it all land. Apparently it's one of the most spectacular incidences and unprecedented interviews. And you reminded me when you started talking about that stuff, I need to go back and revisit and do a piece on that, because that is testimony that the world hasn't seen. And I know
that's amazing.
The individual has, he goes like, yeah, I'm going to do some plans. We got some plans with it. But I managed to get some footage out, and I credited the guy in the phenomenon, and I'm sorry I can't remember more details on that, but apparently it's the most dramatic case and testimony ever heard, ever given about a UFO and the nukes.
What's his name? Mario? Is it Mario?
It'll come to me. It's in the credits of the phenomenon. His name will come to me, and when it does, I'll let you know. You could put it over the screen in here, because I'm struggling to remember the guy.
But it's so, you know, another interesting aspect of the UFOs and nukes thing that I almost hesitate to say, because I think maybe in the minds of certain people who are, you know, not capable of understanding this possibility, that sort of marginalizes the story a little bit, is that I think a high percentage of people who've had close encounters of the crafts themselves around nuclear bases have actually had abduction cases as well. So I was on the phone with Hastings, and it was like, I was like, you know, what percentage of the, because he wrote a follow, it'd be beyond terrifying.
Oh my God.
He wrote a follow-up book called Confessions with Bob Jacobs. Bob Jacobs was a photo instrumentation specialist. Vandenberg
loved him.
Sees in 64, sees the UFO circling around, you know, the Atlas V dummy missile, filmed it. And then the Air Force Office of Special Investigations.
He's so credible.
He's awesome.
He's so credible.
And
you see the message he gave Kirkpatrick?
No, what did he say? He could be a little hot-headed sometimes, was it? If he didn't mince words.
I posted it on my Twitter again. It was really funny.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Dave Grusch told me he's going back to D.C. sometime in the next week or so. And I said, Dave, please do something for me. Tell Dr. Kirkpatrick that Dr. Jacobs says fuck you.
That's unbelievable.
He was so upset because apparently he went and met with him. He gave him all the documents and the case that happened and told him where the footage was or where it should have been and it was taken. And I guess Kirkpatrick just completely dismissed all of that.
He's been traumatized because
Dr. Jacobs was, I've never seen, he's so articulate and he's so funny and I just love that guy.
Well, they took him out as a photo instrumentation specialist, and then they said that he never worked at the Air Force, which is ridiculous.
All the documentation, and I covered it out of the blue.
Exactly, and then his former boss came out later and was like, "No, this guy worked for me." Like, what are you talking? But they tried to erase him.
Oh my God,
it's really messed up. And this is time and time again. Bob Hastings, the F.E. Warren guys that I mentioned, the Missileers. Their careers were really hit after this. I know what I saw. You talk about Peniston, not making it to as high of a rank as he probably could have because he, was a witness for the Rendlesham.
It wasn't a career
case.
Enhancing move at all.
Not at all. So, but the really crazy sub thread that I think people aren't that aware. Thank God, he's amazing. Yeah. He's a legend.
Total legend.
A total legend.
I know.
But this book that he wrote after UFOs and Nukes is called Confessions, and it's about his
personal experiences,
abduction cases.
He put his reputation on the line for that one. I commend him for that.
He did. I agree.
Because that's a risky move.
It is, and it's tough, I think, for people to realize. That guy's so detail oriented. He emailed me. I'd never met him. He emailed me after I did my piece with Grusch, and he was like, actually, it was like a lower percentage of Missileers that I interviewed. It was like 12 out of the 167.
Oh, no way.
But I loved it. I mean, he wrote me this long thing.
Wow, super detailed.
Yeah, and I was like, thank you for that. I was like, I should make a correction, but it was just like extremely semantic thing. But I was like, oh, this guy's legit.
Yeah.
And we talked, and I could tell that he was extremely detail oriented. And then there's this bizarre kind of follow-up angle of like, but, I've also had these experiences myself, which, by the way, in the worldview where they're showing up on these, nuclear bases, which are incredibly protected for everything else, of course, they can show up in your bedroom too, and they can track the people themselves. And that's a weird thing to admit.
I've never had those experiences, but I've met very credible people that I have tremendous respect for that with nothing to gain and everything to lose, that I have to say, I was like, I believe them.
Yeah.
I've never covered that aspect of the phenomenon in any of my films.
Yes.
And I've had people criticize me for that.
Yeah.
But it's like, I feel like baby steps. I feel like you can't go too far because I know my own progression has taken decades. Like, like I said, I'm a nuts and bolts kind of guy. That's entering into a realm that there's even less evidence for, right?
Sure.
Than some of these other cases.
Although you do have like implants,
a lot of people.
And you have
well, I'll tell you,
biological changes, and
I met with Bob. Not Bob Jacobs. Sorry. I'm looking at his face right now. He's written the book. He's written a number of books on so-called alien abductions.
David Jacobs?
No. Yeah, sorry. Leslie Kane was with
Ralph Blumenthal?
No. He came to he attended this event. In any case, I met with him, and he said he ended up dying like a
Bud
year.
Hopkins?
Bud Hopkins.
Yeah.
He ended up dying like a year or two later of cancer, and he was all excited. I was in New York City to see Leslie. We were putting on this event together, and he's like, "Oh, I want to have coffee with you. I want to show you something." And he was all excited. And I'm not really that into the whole. I'm not into it. I just haven't really looked in, professionally for any of my films because I felt like it's a slippery slope. But in any case, he had a number of so-called experiencers from all around the world, and he said, "I want you to draw what you see on the inside of the ship." On the table, and they all drew the same symbol on the wall.
What was the symbol?
I can't remember, but it was like,
oh, you can't do
no,
that
I
to
can't.
me,
I'm sorry. It was like almost 20 years ago, but I remember looking at the different variations of this. Clearly, they're looking at the same damn thing.
Do you know what it?
How the hell? No, I had no idea what
you
it meant.
You got to take it to a symbology.
But he was we had a 15-minute thing, and he was super excited about it, and he had drawings from all these different people.
We have to figure it out.
None of them knew each other. Well, I don't know. Yeah, again, this is not my area of expertise, and I don't really not look into them. I'll listen, and again, I suspend. But that was the most compelling evidence for alleged abduction cases because they were all drawing a slightly different variation of
the same thing.
Yes, no question. He was like, "What do you see?" And they were drawing it.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God.
No, that's pretty.
This is impossible.
Yeah.
How is this even possible? And he was all excited about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the alien abduction aspect.
Well, you have, Gary Nolan,
happening.
who's a Stanford professor. He's, claimed not an abduction, but, aliens at the foot of his bed.
I would have been probably 6 or 7 because it was in our first house that my parents had bought in Windsor, of little men in the bedroom. I was awake. I knew they were there. I could see them.
Room and stuff. And so you have, some extremely credible people who've done very real things outside of UFOs and aliens or whatever. Like he's a Nobel nominee every year, and he's said that.
What a risky thing to report on. Why would anyone,
courageous.
Why would anybody do that to themselves, knowing it's like,
Well, that's what I think. I think the dirty secret is that everybody has something autobiographical, and that causes them to look into this, or and I think that's should be owned, and it shouldn't be a source of shame or
you and I talked last night because I've had my own experiences, and I just said, I'd rather just not.
Yeah.
And the reason, because my reasoning,
I was going to bring that up.
My reasoning behind it is it really has nothing to do with where my position stands today with the phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I think that people might interpret that as like, oh, well, he's clearly jaded because he saw something,
Sure.
or he thinks he saw something. I have no interest in proving.
Well, it also would be weird if you hadn't. I think it'd be weirder if you hadn't seen anything. So it's like you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
But if you do, it's like
I base my beliefs today on my interaction with witnesses, my research, I remember going to the National Archives and that's a whole story, but coming up with all those original documents from Project Blue Book files that were so amazing because it was right there in black and white, some color, of the documentation of one of my favorite landing cases. It was like the footprints of the alien was documented and then a diagram by the first military officer on the scene, like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like it's right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that is why that and all the other cases all around the world that I've investigated, that's why I believe what I believe today. And I feel like if I start talking about some personal experience that I had, people are like, oh, well.
You don't want to start there.
I don't really,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I get that.
I don't think it's going to help me any bit. And it doesn't really matter.
No. Well, I don't. We'll talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, they be like, I thought James was a freak. Now I know he is.
No. I think quite the contrary. But you, I think, sold some UFO footage to Logan Paul. Is that
no,
true? What
I didn't sell it to him. No, here's what happened.
Yeah.
So this is so funny.
Yeah. He went on his podcast, right?
Yeah, well, okay. In the 90s, on my first documentary, I was working with this guy, Chuck Clark.
Chuck Clark, a self-described military watchdog, says FBI agents and other lawmen used a sealed search warrant to seize his property, including computers and personal files.
Bob Lazar was just exploding in the headlines. It was all over the place. It was in the 90s. I think he went public in 89. But in any case, it was in the early, mid-90s, whatever, and everyone's talking about Bob Lazar and his tape. It was exploding. I mean, it was all over the news. Everybody's, because wow, if it's true, really? And Chuck Clark, who had written a handbook on Area 51 S4 guide, and he was an amateur astronomer, and he was out under the night sky quite often in and around the base, or not in the classified areas. He had figured out a way that there were a handful of vantage points on these specific mountain ranges where he could spy on the base, and he would take people out there and stuff. And so, he had a sighting of something that exhibited technology that was just, light years, like ding, ding, ding. So I was interviewing for that, and I was going back and forth during that period of production, and became friends and hung out with him on numerous occasions. And one day he called me up, and he said, I'll give you the truncated version, but he said, James, I got something you need to see. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm like 12 hours away. At least. He said, well, can you tell me anything more? He goes, well, I can tell you that when you see it, your jaw's going to hit the floor. I said, that good? He goes, that good. Cancel my plans, jumped in my car, boom, woo, went straight out to the Alien or Little Rachel, Nevada. Going to his, he had a trailer, and he popped in this VHS tape, and there were two guys on a typical road trip. I know the type. I've done it myself. You know, they're videotaping each other, goofing off. They're listening to music. They're driving down the long, road, super remote desert highway. They're goofing off in the little Alien, and then all of a sudden, they're super serious. They're inside a parked car. It's dusk, and they're arguing in the car. Like one of them's like the object is either over them or coming towards them and almost over them, and they're yelling back and forth in the car. And it sounds to me like they're trying to crawl under the seat. That's what it sounded like at the time. Then the dashboard lights up, and I could see all these shadows eerily moving around. So the source of light is moving because it's causing the shadows on the inside of the car to move weird. And then one of the kids says, "I'm getting out," and the guy's telling him not to get out, and he's like, "I'm getting out anyway," and he gets out. And then the next thing you see is a orange disc-shaped thing just wobbling in like it looks like magic. The way it just kind of just hovers there like this. And I tell you, man, I was like, holy shit, where did you get this? So I was telling this story to Logan Paul, and he's like, yeah, the footage that disappears. I said, well, this guy Chuck Clark apparently still has it. But it had been 26 years of a VHS tape playing over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's going to be seriously degraded. Anybody knows half-inch VHS playing over those heads for 25 years, it's not going to look great. It's going to have dropout galore. I mean, so I guess at that time, and this guy's so pissed off with me now, he won't even talk to me, but whatever. Sorry. I feel like the one that he should be pissed off with is Chuck Clark for not sharing that footage when he could have, right?
Yeah. Wait, who's pissed off at you?
He's a private investigator. I can't remember his name off the top, but in any case, I wouldn't say it anyway because he's upset. But he had found Chuck Clark, and he was in touch with Chuck Clark. I said, do not mention my name, because if you do, Chuck Clark's not going to meet with you, because Chuck Clark is pissed off at me because I asked him every 2 years for 15 years to get that tape. He said, you ask me again, I'm never speaking to you. And I asked him again because I had somebody come along that was willing to give 30 grand for it. So I said, I'll ask. And I asked, and that was it. He cut me loose. Never going to talk to me again. And he's a man of his word.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, keep my name out of it. And so this guy's going to go out, and Chuck says, yeah, I still have the VHS tape. I'll show it to you. And this is a couple of years ago. So yeah, about a couple of years ago. So I'm telling, like, after the Logan Paul interview, they shut the cameras off and we're talking, and Logan, I said, well, the guy's going to go, I got this guy who's just contacted me. I never met him, but he's going to go meet with Chuck Clark. And Logan's like, well, where is he? I said, he's in Arizona, somewhere, remote Arizona. So Logan's like, I'm going to meet with him. I said, do whatever you got to do to get that footage. Like, that's been sitting way too long. So I guess he brought I want to say he brought 100 grand in cash. I think it was 100 grand. It was at least 50. It might've been 100. And I could ask him, and he gets out there and he's got a couple of button cams on his thing. And, the tape was pretty degraded, and, but he filmed, could I see it again, and repositioned himself a little bit, played it a bunch of times. And, I guess he offered him 100 grand, but he wouldn't take it. And, anyway, that whole story broke. And
the guy wouldn't take 100 grand for
evidently he was not going to sell it. It was not going to happen. Yeah. And so here's the real kicker. What really gets me. So I don't know what Logan's going to do with the footage, but Logan said it's pretty. He's like, you could see it wobbling, but it's really degraded. I mean, again, VHS tapes don't last. It should have been digitized or put on.
The footage is compelling, not convincing. It's from 1995. The tape had been worn down. It's been played probably over 100 times. And so the quality is not great. And everything about it screams bullshit, which is the true reason I haven't released it.
But before that happened, and right around that time, this really frustrates me, I contacted George Knapp. And I said, George, as I was wrapping up the phenomenon, I said, George, you have got to go and get this tape from Chuck Clark, or at least see it. And George is like, oh yeah, I know Chuck Clark. I did a whole story on him for the local news station. His place was ransacked by the feds. You know, they came in and I don't know what he had. Maybe he had photographs of planes and hangars. I don't know, but he had that, or maybe it was that footage. Don't know. I said, you got to go. You got to go. And I kept telling him, like, I can't do it, but I'm telling you, I've seen this tape and it's amazing. And like, you got to go find, he's like, I'll get on it. And I kept pushing George, and I like George Knapp a lot. And I have tremendous respect for him. And I kept pushing him. And one day he goes, listen, man, you're not my damn wife. Or, you know, my girl would stop needling me. Just stop. I said, he goes, I'm really big. I said, okay, sorry. I'm just trying to hand you what I feel is the best. You've done all this reporting for all these years on Area 51 and Bob Lazar and UFOs at Area 51. And I saw the best footage I've ever seen in my life out there. So George Knapp doesn't go out there. The guy that gave it to Chuck Clark was a TV producer in Los Angeles, and he had it on like a beta SP tape and a master, I'm told. And from that master, he gave a copy to Chuck Clark, right? So as soon as the private eye and got the name of that individual, we went after him, and he had just died. So if we would have gotten there, if George would have gotten there just a month or two earlier, we probably would have had the master on Beta SP.
Oh, man.
So we contacted the guy's network where he worked. Then we contacted his son, got in touch with his son, and his son couldn't be bothered. He's like, my dad just died. You're talking to me about a UFO tape? Like, you know what I mean? And so it might be ripe. I can't really do it because Chuck doesn't like me. And now this new private eye, because of Logan Paul going out with cameras, he found out, and now he's pissed at me. You know, and I'm like, you know what? All's fair. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Chuck Clark's the one that kept this really compelling data hidden for 20. I even said to Chuck, just put me in touch with the guy that gave it to you and let me talk to them.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't do it. So Chuck was kind of in on it. So anyway, I went to Area 51 just like last year, and I went to the Little Alien, and I talked to some people there that've been there, that have known me since I was in my 20s. And she was like, you think we're that stupid? You don't think we would have made a digital copy? And looked at me.
Oh, wow.
Said, well, come on, give me your number. Let me talk. You know, and she's like, there's reasons why that tape hasn't been leaked like that. I said, well, can you tell me? She's like, no, but you think we're stupid? You don't think we made a digital copy? And looked at me like that.
Well, there you go.
And then she just walked away. I was like, so.
Wow.
So, you know, Logan Paul's like, you know, this is seriously eroded and chewed up, but yes, it's
why. So why won't he put the video if like he has something?
It's risky for him because Chuck said I'll sue you.
Oh, he did,
for one, and two,
he can handle.
It's not, you know, it's not crystal clear. It's like I saw it when it was a week old.
Yeah.
You know, I saw it. It was pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, and this is a button cam version.
Yeah, it's a button cam of a screen that
it's
you know
like
what
double
I mean?
Corrupted.
Yeah, he tried to buy it. He tried to get it. He said he had a stack, and nope, wasn't having it. So. The unfortunate thing is the guy that gave him that, I'm sure there was a master tape. Hopefully when they cleared out his cubby holes at this news organization, they didn't throw everything away.
Yeah.
Hopefully maybe his son got it. But man, I've been chasing it since I was your age, you know, what I mean? Younger than you.
Yeah.
Like, I've done everything I can. It's not like I'm giving up or anything. But I'm busy making the program. I got to go back to Brazil.
It'll come back around.
I got to go back to Brazil. I got to update that film.
Yeah.
I got an event at the National Press Club I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to film that. It's going to be a modern day version of I Know What I Saw. Like,
cool.
I wish I could clone myself. There's only so much you can do. And I'm raising a 10-year-old, you know? It's
It's the most important thing.
Yeah, most important thing. And you know, and I'm dealing with like nightmare scenarios with all these different distributors.
Yeah.
Jesus. Not making it easy over here, you know?
No. Well, hey, you're doing a hard thing. You're getting a very important core truth out, and it would make sense. You signed up for a hard, you know, it's a hard, long road.
Yeah. Well, at least I'm getting laughed at a little less lately.
Oh, yeah.
I've been getting laughed at. I've gotten laughed at my whole,
you should feel very vindicated.
My whole adult life.
That's amazing. I mean
that's a lot of laughter.
That's a lot of laughter, but you should be laughing now because you really, I think, have been vindicated and proven right on a lot of stuff, and you were there before it was popular. So,
well, we have you and I are indebted. Like, you know, we've got people like Stanton Friedman and Dr. Hynek.
Yeah.
And Kehoe and, all these people that came before us that were advocates and pushing, and they really had it tough. Like, my God.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they never got to see what we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
I'm so fortunate as someone who's been doing this as long as I have.
Yeah.
To see what's happening today. It's fast. When I watch those congressional hearings, I'm not kidding, man. I had tears just flowing down my face.
Yep.
For an hour and a half straight.
Yeah.
I was like, it's coming out.
Yeah.
Look, we're not having the progress that we'd like to see is happening as quickly. I say, be patient, you guys. Like,
I was in that room. You should have been in that room for me.
I had a conflicting thing, and I just simply couldn't be there. There's something going on for a filming. I was delivering something. I can't remember. I was like, if I killed myself, I could have made it, but it was like that kind of situation,
yeah.
But I just say, be patient. We're going to see significant pushback. Lou Elizondo's book. There's other documentaries. There's the program coming out. I don't see, quite honestly, how the program is not going to make waves.
Yeah.
I think we put together a pretty compelling case.
Oh, it's incredible.
Right?
It's awesome.
Like,
I think it will make waves.
And I pushed it. I wanted a good, strong base hit because I knew that I couldn't take the time that it took to produce the phenomenon. I mean, the phenomenon, in my opinion, I hate to toot my own horn. It was a group effort, but it's kind of a masterpiece in terms of like
the best,
the production qualities and the B-roll and the archive footage that we got and stitching the whole story together. I worked with this guy, Mark Barish. He's a really brilliant writer. He was really instrumental in helping like stitch it all together in a very comprehensive way. And I'm very proud of that film, and I'll always be proud of that film. But this is timely. Things are moving quickly right now, and I wanted to get the program out as quickly as I could because it's relevant now.
Yes.
And a lot of the people that are risking themselves coming forward and meeting with me, they want it out now because they want to keep that momentum. And so, but I'm still very proud of it. I think it's a very good, you know what I mean?
By the assertion that the U.S. government has spaceships of non-human intelligence in their possession.
That kind of revelation unearths people's beliefs.
I would go to jail to say things that I've been exposed to in the program.
No, the Gary McKinnon, who I've known about for a while. He's, a story that's out there. This hacker from the UK,
yes,
who is hacking into like American military databases, biggest hack in U.S. history. He's getting into NSA archives,
NSA, DIA, CIA, NASA, you name it.
And a page comes up, and it's this list of 11 or 12 off-planet officers.
After a year, he got pay dirt.
And I found an Excel spreadsheet that was actually called, or at least in the heading of the column, it said non-terrestrial officers. And I was like, my bloody God, that's just
non-terrestrial officers.
Non-terrestrial officers with ranks and names, and then a separate sheet with tabs for material transfer between ships. And these were, I don't remember the names now. It's a long time ago. A lot of people give me a hard time for not remembering the names and stuff, but it was a long time ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's always stuck in my head because in my mind, in the UFO world, you have people like you doing very hard-headed nuts and bolts investigations.
Yeah.
And then you have the kooky like secret space program, like really weird stuff like Operation Solar Warden and 20 and back you get you go to somewhere, and like I've always been super skeptical of that, but when I hear that this guy Gary McKinnon, who's in the program you interview, who just seems so normal and credible,
right?
Yeah, just like actually like a cool guy. Yeah, he's clearly made a big mistake, but outside of some big issues.
Oh God, that Talking Head song, "What Have I Done?"
Yeah,
remember
exactly.
It's one of my favorite lines in the movie. Oh, that's what that Talking Head song. Oh God, what have I done?
Yeah, that's right. He says that. Yeah,
when he got caught, that's what he said.
That's funny, and he has a guitar in the back. He's clearly like a funny guy. So. He just doesn't he seemed like in over his head, but not a liar at all.
No, God, no.
And so what is, how do you interpret that? You see a page of off-planet
extraterrestrial officers.
Is it extraterrestrial or off-planet?
Extraterrestrial, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But you could Google that, but I'm pretty sure it's extraterrestrial. Yeah, because I remember going
crazy.
Well, extraterrestrial, could that be because you're off-planet? Would that be
right
astronauts? Would that be extraterrestrial?
But officer? No.
You know what I mean?
An astronaut's not an officer.
A list of extraterrestrial officers?
You're just an astronaut. You wouldn't say officer.
Right.
That's
right?
Weird. Yeah.
So, yeah, that was really weird. I mean, gosh, and that was like...
How do we get that list?
I know. God, can you imagine?
What is that?
And then the craft is very similar to what crashed in God, and that was 96.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the UFO crashed in Brazil, but it was a cylindrical shape, metallic object that
no rivets, no.
Yeah, all that, and quite similar to what he described, except his had like a little. Well, he draws it.
He drew it. Yeah.
It's basically a cigar with a thing here and a thing there on either end. But
what? Like, unless they were messing with him, which they didn't. I mean, he's still a criminal according to the U.S. He can't leave
England and
Wales.
Wales, yeah.
Yeah,
that's right. He's restricted there for the rest of his life.
So yeah, that's just. What's going on with that? That's
crazy.
It's I find that interesting because, at least to me,
they wanted to lock him up for like 60 years.
Yeah. I mean, but it's also like
that's real jail time.
That's real jail time. But when you look at these crashes that occur near nuclear sites, I don't want to say it should be mind blowing for the average person.
Right.
I think for me or you, it's a little like, okay, yeah, well, it's expected. It's not quite as mind blowing when you see this new fact. This guy hacking into these.
It makes you wonder.
It makes you wonder.
It makes you wonder, and it's funny because I'd forgotten about that aspect of what he'd seen. I forgot about that. All I remember is that he saw photographic evidence, and then he brought it up again. And while I was thinking about that, it was just like extraterrestrial officers. What? And then I interview the individual U.S. Air Force X in the film, and he talks about this alleged encounter at Nellis in '94 with a guy dressed in, military outfit that clearly, according to him, did not appear to be human. I started thinking about the extraterrestrial officers. I was like, God, is that what they were talking about? Like,
we're in touch with.
And there are other, like you had mentioned earlier, about books that had been written from military people about encounters with these alleged encounters with these the landing at Holloman. Like, I don't know, man. There's no smoke without fire, right?
Yeah. Well, you have high mesh.
You'd have to discount everything not to believe any of it.
Absolutely. Well, you have. I think you need gradations of probability.
Yes,
and that's okay. You can say, I think this is 20% probable, but worth cataloging in my mind and not forgetting about. And then looking for more corroboration, but admitting that it's low probability. And I think most people, they think in this sort of 2D, like yes or no, binary. But Chaim Eshed, who's head of the Israeli Space Force, who
I remember that.
Yeah, he writes
like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
2 years ago, he writes his biography. And he says,
was like.
Yeah, he says,
oh my God, are you kidding me?
There's a galactic federation. He says that there are bases on Mars, and
people don't even know how to that. Like just right over the head of almost everybody.
Yeah.
When you make those kind of statements, because not to say they're not true, or maybe they are true, I don't know. But it's like, I'll give you an example of how it's almost too much to process. Because when I did Moment of Contact, I just got back from Brazil, and I had this like news organization at my house with Leslie Kane interviewing me, and we're so excited, let's talk about Brazil. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to talk about that case because they weren't ready for it, right? Live aliens, all the rest of it. Well, what was the example I was going to use? I just lost my train of thought. Okay, I interviewed some hospice workers in the 90s that had that huge boomerang-shaped craft that we talked about earlier in March 13th, 1997, including the governor of Arizona, Fife Simonton, all saw this massive, and there were other UFOs too, but one in particular that was of interest was this boomerang-shaped. Apparently it was, some people say it was a mile across, some people say it was 2 miles across. It was colossal, and it flew over people's homes silently and like made no noise, and they could see compartments in the metal. I mean, it was massive. And I interviewed this group of hospice workers. I think there was like 5 or 6 of them all together. And they were sitting there having tea. It was late in the afternoon, and this thing went right over the top of them. And they said it took like 5 minutes to pass overhead. And the reason why I'm telling you this is that after it passed overhead, they just went right back to their conversation. And I'm like, you didn't get up and call 911, get a camera, like chase it with your car, like nothing? Yeah. They said, no. I said, so you, hang on. So all 5 of you stood here, sat here, looking up at this thing as it passed overhead, and you say it took like 5 minutes. That's how big it was. And then you did nothing. And they said, yep. I don't know why. We just didn't do anything. We didn't call. We didn't yell for my husband. We didn't get in our car and because I was like, get in the car, chase it, get camera. Didn't do any of that. And I just thought, maybe it's just too much for people to process. Like when they hear, like sometimes the mainstream media that's not educated on this topic, and even it's hard for me to process things sometimes.
Yeah.
Like the crash retrieval stuff and people testifying, like I never thought I'd see that that day in my career. And so with this statements you're saying from this Israeli military official, was he intelligence or something? I know, I read about it.
He was head of Space Force, I believe. You have the NRO, which is like optical observation and recon, and then a National Reconnaissance Office, and then you have Space Force, which supports other, Navy, military, but with comms. And so he's head of the Israel equivalent of Space Force.
Okay.
Which is an extremely important position. They're doing all their
You wouldn't put a wacko
comms
ahead of that.
No.
But my point is like that, you got someone of that level of credibility, of that level of government insider, military insider coming forward and making those statements. It's almost like the media doesn't know how to process it. I, with 30-year background of looking into these cases all around the world, I have a hard time processing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm only going to imagine what the media, it's like, if you make those statements and they're that significant, why wouldn't you put some of the resources that we put in for president's sexual peccadillos? Like if you put 1/10 the resources into investigating some of these claims, let's get to the bottom of it. Or David Grusch.
Yeah.
David came forward like he put in his credibility, he lost his position. Like he at great personal sacrifice, he came forward. The implications of what he's saying are so profound.
Yeah, beyond.
How could you possibly not put some resources and follow up? I mean, News Nation's really the only outfit out there really sticking their teeth into this topic, right?
Yeah. Well, I did a piece with them too.
But
I kept thinking the whole time, why am I in this position? I mean, I've become close with him, but I'm like, it was.
You did a great piece, and it was. But my point is, why isn't Fox News, CNN?
No, totally. I kept thinking the whole time.
All be doing. They have resources and contacts.
Well, the backstory is they had an opportunity. The New York. I mean, Leslie Kean published the initial article that prompted the whole thing. But she had to do it in the debrief because Julian Barnes, who's
I know. I was right there when it was all going.
He has a bias against the whole. I spoke to her at the.
Julian Barnes has a bias.
He hates the UFOs.
And it was her biggest story in 2017, right? Wasn't it the most popular stories they've ever published?
When I sat next to her at the congressional hearing, and I was like, "Why didn't that go in the New York Times?" He was like, he was like, maybe I'll cut this if I'm throwing her under the bus by saying this, but like she was like, they just are anti.
It was going to go to the Washington Post, and it was going to go to Politico,
which shows that
it would have gone to Politico, but Politico needed another week, and I guess. Grusch was really worried. I mean, it had to come out.
Yeah, because his name was out already.
And the News Nation piece was going to run, and they were going to run that. Yeah, the execution of how that all came about, and it wasn't anyone in particular's fault. I guess the New York Times was looking into it for quite some time, and did they take a pass?
Well, so Leslie Kean is a staff writer for the New York Times. I think her default was, I want to do this on the New York Times. But I think
it was her number one.
I think they were like, you can't do this here, which is insane because I guess they wanted to speak to one of the 40 witnesses. Fine, you should be able to speak to one of the 40 witnesses. However, not saying that him coming out is worthy of a story given Dave's credentials is showing that you have a complete bias. It's ridiculous because that is a story.
Yeah,
and it's a story when you
then you see the publications like the stories that have been published in the New York Times. Post,
for the
most part,
give me a break. They were
like, please.
Well, they've been in April of 22 or something. They were saying that COVID was zoonotic origin. Like after everyone and their mother was saying this obviously came from a lab, they were sticking with the idiot party line. So like, I don't know. I
think some of their contacts in the intel said, "You want to continue a nice relationship?
Of course, yeah.
There's nothing to the story.
No, that's exactly what happened.
Drop it.
That's exactly what happened.
Don't you think?
I know that, and I've helped since then with trying to get Grusch's op-ed out or whatever a little bit, and like I see the pain he's going through.
I worked so hard to portray him in the light that he deserves in the program.
I think he did.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I hope he sees that.
Yeah,
I'm sure he will.
I told him that. And he was like, "Awesome."
Oh, I'm really glad. Yeah, because I don't blame him. I mean, he was a bit skittish, and he was very selective with a handful of interviews that he gave. You being one of them, and And I talked to somebody there, and even Leslie tried to get him for an upcoming production. He's like, I'm just not really doing it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
I don't either.
But I really tried to do his story justice, and not for any other reason that I believe him. I believe him, and I think he merits that level of coverage.
I fully agree. Yeah. James, this has been an honor, man. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.